Yes, we can proceed.
My humble greetings to the Honourable Bench. Your Lordship, I along with my co-counsel is appearing on behalf of the plaintiff. The facts of the matter states that Yashika Singh is my client's daughter who had been married to Rajiv Mehra on the 24th of April 2018, which was solemnized as per Hindu Marriage Act 1955. He has an established business of manufacturing steel and he lives with his mother, Shivani Mehra, brother Sanjay Mehra, and sister-in-law Sushila Mehra. Yashika was not happy after the marriage and had differences with Rajiv over trivial matters due to dowry demands. During the solemnization of marriage, dowry was given in terms of gold and 10 lakhs in cash. However, this never fulfilled the urge of dowry for the in-laws, so the mental health of Yashika was severely affected. The couple had frequent fights, and this was a reason behind Yashika Singh visiting.
Can you maintain a distance from the mic a bit?
The couple had frequent fights, and this was a reason behind Yashika Singh visiting her paternal house quite frequently. She can come and Yashika thought that having a child would put an end to all the marital disputes. As a reason behind this, she conceived and a son on 16 September 2019 was born. Yashika was subjected to constant mental and physical torture due to her in-laws' increasing dowry demands, which my client, belonging to a middle-class family, could not meet. However, the cruelty did not stop, and on 17 December 2021, it was found that Yashika had consumed poison. My client had informed the police regarding the same, and in conclusion, the police stated that Yashika consuming poison was a mere accident and that she was not subjected to mental or physical abuse. Yashika again came back to my client's house but was sent back to her in-laws' house after certain negotiations were done between the families, which in turn was an assurance that my client's daughter would be well looked after. On 14th of April 2022, Yashika was found burning in her kitchen. She was spotted by her neighbor Ashish Gujral, who wrapped her in a blanket, and the fire was brought under control.
Could you just come to the issues? No need to again reiterate the facts. Come to the issues directly.
Okay, my lordship. Thank you, my lordship. My lordship, I have certain indulgences in whatever my learned friend is claiming, and I want to take you through certain facts and issues of the case which would prove that the Mehras were the reason behind the death of my client's daughter. I humbly submit that the plaintiff should be held, I humbly submit that the defendants, Mr. Rajiv Mehra and Mrs. Shivani Mehra, would be held guilty for the abetment of suicide of Mrs. Whoever abets the commission of such suicide, he or shall be punished with a sentence of either for a term which may extend for a period of 10 years and shall also be liable to fine. Abetment involves a mental process of instigating a person or intentionally aiding that person in doing of a thing, and would also involve the mental process of entering into conspiracy for the doing of that thing. In the case of Randhir Singh and another versus the state of Punjab, it gives an account of the repeated demands of dowry from the plaintiff's daughter and mentally harassing and abusing her for the same, which caused her death after putting herself on fire. The court cognizance of this guilt of the accused persons and a conviction was given. With respect to the above judgment, it must be noted that Yashika too had been mentally tortured by her husband and in-laws, demanding more dowry, due to which she committed suicide. Another similar issue which had arisen in the case of state of Rajasthan versus Gidhari Lal in which the court rightly presumed that the suicide was because of the treatment meted out cruelly, and such suicide was abetted by a husband. The defendants has also committed an offence under section 304 of the Indian Penal Code, since all the ingredients required for this section to be invoked have been fully satisfied. The conditions include that the death of a woman must have been caused by burns or bodily injuries not under normal circumstances within a period of 7 years from her marriage, and stated that any demand of any property or valuable security which is in any way connected with marriage constitutes dowry demand. In the landmark judgment, the trial court held her mother-in-law and husband guilty of committing an offence under section 304 of the Indian Penal Code. They were given punishments for 7 years of rigorous imprisonment. When the appeal was made to High Court, it agreed to the trial court and the appeal was rejected. The appeal was then made to Supreme Court. The apex court held that demand for any property. My lordship,
Neighbor 1 or neighbor 2?
Oh, chief, yes.
my lordship, my lordship, the plaintiff would now like to call upon its first witness.
Yes, you can proceed.
Neighbor or
The deceased
chief?
chief examination and chief, my lordship.
Father of the victim.
Victim.
Okay.
Bajrang Singh.
How are you related to the victim?
I'm the father of Rajita Singh.
With whom did you get married to your daughter?
Rajiv Mehra.
On which date?
24th April 2018.
Counsel, please address from there.
How was the marriage solemnized?
As per Hindu Marriage Act.
At the time of marriage, to the bride and the groom.
10 lakh rupees and gold ornaments.
Was it a demand for dowry or is
Yes.
it just out of love and affection you gave to your daughter?
It was a demand of dowry.
So during the solemnization of marriage it was given by you
Yes.
or after the marriage?
During the marriage.
During or at the solemnization? Is it at the solemnization of marriage it was given or was there any demand subsequent to the marriage?
Yes, there was demand, but I couldn't meet further demand.
No, we are asking about that initial difference, that is 10 lakh and 22 given.
During the marriage.
10 lakh
I gave it during the marriage.
during the marriage. Is it cash or in check? How do you transfer this fund?
I could not remember right now.
Okay, you can proceed.
This cash was given by you voluntarily or as per demand.
As per demand.
You might tell before the honorable bench in what manner she led her marital life in her in-laws and how she was treated there.
My daughter was a victim of and cruelty since her marriage.
The defendants claim that Yashika was not mentally sound at the time of marriage and therefore the marriage is void ab initio. Do you agree?
No.
Why do you think she attempted to commit suicide?
Because my daughter's in-laws they had inflicted mental and physical torture on my daughter, and she was not at all happy in her marriage.
Did she ever reported those incidences to you?
To my wife.
And what steps you have taken as a parent? Since she reported all these untoward incidences happening in the matrimonial home, what steps? Did you take any steps? Did you complain to the police?
Because we are a part of Indian society, and parents of a daughter due to some societal stigma, and my daughter also wanted to carry out this marriage, and that's why we didn't.
Your counsel is saying that there was an incident of consuming poisons, right? What I heard from her statements. So that was a very untoward incident happening to your daughter. So why didn't you take any step? Like so much cruelty, so much harassment happening at the matrimonial home, and even she could go up to consume poison. So no steps have been taken because we are seeing now that she has, as per your counsel, she has chose death over everything.
We didn't know that Yashika was going to commit suicide.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions?
Yes, my lordship. Did you ever protest? Did you ever complain about the torture your daughter was inflicted upon by her in-laws?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. Did you ever complain about the torture your daughter was inflicted upon by her in-laws?
We tried to, but our daughter, she said that she wanted to carry out her marriage, and therefore we didn't complain.
Who bore the expenses of the child of your daughter?
Me.
When the incident took place, this death, when she died, what is the date?
So 14th April 2000.
14th April. So question is very clear that it was in 17th December 2021. She consumed poison, right? And is there any incident of cruelty or that she brought to your notice that she was subjected to cruelty, physical or mental, before consumption of this poison?
Yes.
What and what measures you have taken to address those things? Because in between 17th December and 14th April 2022, that means 5 months. So she first she attended for the consumption of this poison, and then after 5 months she commits suicide. So what measures have you taken? When you come to know about the consumption of poison, and then before consumption of poison, she was subjected to cruelty or not? First question.
Yes.
Second question, post consumption of this poison, what measures you have taken to address this problem to avoid further consumption? She becomes unsuccessful in first attempt, becomes successful in second attempt. So what measures you have taken to address this? Have you filed any complaint against this? Or have you met any neighbors of your daughter?
When she consumed the poison for the first time during the month of December, after that I kept her at my home, but she wanted to go to her in-laws, and that's why after some negotiations done,
What negotiation? Between whom?
her in-laws and us.
What can you say?
So the relationship was continuously being strained, or was it mended?
Whether your daughter was forced to be there or she amicably, voluntarily
Returned back.
She voluntarily returned back.
What are the indications were there from the part of the in-laws that she will not be subjected to further cruelty?
Her mother-in-law and her husband said that they would not torture furthermore, and they would not pressurize for more dowry.
That means in that point of time, they accepted that they used to torture your daughter,
Yes.
right? Accepted.
Yes.
This one.
What happened on such incident day?
Pardon?
What happened on the day of the incident, 14th April 2018?
I got a news from one of their neighbor that my daughter had set her on fire, and she was carried to a hospital, Kolkata Medical College, and at 7:30 p.m. I got the heart-wrenching news that she has died.
Who informed you?
One of their neighbor, Sukant Rajput.
That means the neighbor too
lordship. You are-
Who you want to call next? Is it done?
But just last question, my lordship. Do you suspect anyone else's involvement in this case apart from the defendants? No. Thank you, Lordship.
Thank you, Kenny. Now, who you want to next? Any other other witness you want to?
The prosecution would now like to invite upon its second witness, the victim's mother, Ms. Uba Devi Singh.
Mother.
Second witness.
So you can ask one question. You can allow one minute. You can leave 1 minute time. You can ask one question to the. So frame it accordingly and ask. Only single question would be allowed. You were the mother, right?
Yes.
Straight away put the question.
Are you aware of the treatment meted out to your daughter by her in-laws when she conceived?
Yes, my daughter used to tell me over telephonic conversations that the conditions worsened after she conceived. She was facing mental trauma and physical assault.
The defendants claim that your daughter Yashida was not mentally sound at the time of her marriage. You agree to the same?
No.
That's it, my lordship. Thank you.
Thank you. You can leave. I think cross would be there. Cross defense. They have given. For the defense counsel, when do you want to cross?
So in your 161 statement to the police, you said that Rajiv used to beat physically and hit Yashika, and there was a physical torture to Yashika. Is it correct?
Yes. He used to come drunk at night and he used to physically assault my daughter.
Point to be noted. So you said that Rajiv had a drinking habit. So you didn't know about it before marriage. And do you admit that Rajiv had a drinking habit? Point to be noted, Milord. I want to call Bhajan.
Was it an arranged marriage or a love marriage?
So arranged marriage.
Okay, you can proceed with.
But that's further. Further.
So I want to ask that when was the dowry asked? Like when was the dowry asked for? Can you give any specific date before marriage, after marriage, during marriage? Anything?
I cannot remember the date, but it was during the marriage.
So you do not remember when the dowry was asked? Point to be noted, my lord.
During the marriage, this expression seeks further connotation. What is the exact connotation of during marriage? The entire conjugal life can be the entire duration of the marriage. We have to specify for the knowledge of the court also. And was it the demand was on when the negotiations were going on, when the marriage was date was fixed? Because as your wife fixed and all. So did they ask for the money that time? Then on the date of marriage you have to give me 10 lakh rupees
Yes.
along with gold jewelries.
Yes. And even after that, when my daughter was leading her conjugal life, her married life, that time her parents-in-law and her husband pressurized.
For more dowry, for more money. That was subsequent to the marriage, during their conjugal right.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Counsel.
So you had given the amount to them, the amount and the gold, as you said.
10 lakh rupees and a gold on
Gold. Do you have any receipt of the gold? Because gold. Do you have any receipt, any documentary evidence to prove?
Counsel is asking how often you transfer the content and gold. Do you have this much gold in the account? And in what form you transfer the cash or check or bank transaction?
I've given the gold, but I can't remember in what form I have given the amount.
You don't remember,
No.
but you have given.
Yes.
Okay. Point to be noted. Cannot remember. It was not so long ago that the dowry was given. So, was there any negotiations?
In what sense?
Between your family and Rajiv's family? Was there any negotiation after the marriage?
You're talking about the dowry amount?
Negotiation.
What negotiation?
Just
Okay.
exemplify the
So
term negotiation.
when after
What do you
she
mean by that?
consumed poison on 17 December 2021, was there any negotiation between your family and
Yes.
what was the negotiation said?
That her mother-in-law and her husband would not inflict more torture upon her and would not ask for more dowry amount.
So this simple statement made you believe that whatever was cruelty was happening.
Objection, my lordship. My lordship.
Wait.
So this simple because of this simple statement, if you thought that they would have inflicted doubt, if they would have inflicted cruelty, and one statement switched your mind and you sent her back to her in-laws' house.
As I said earlier as well, I am a father of a daughter and I am a part of Indian society. My daughter also wanted to lead her married life. So for that I had to negotiate the terms.
Okay.
How was your parents and your son-in-law's approach towards your daughter? She was a kid. How did that kid is confusion?
Most of the times I would not get any news of my grandson when he was in my daughter's in-law house, and during his birth I bore all the expenses.
Mr. Counsel, what is your contention by asking these questions?
So the negotiation.
Yes. So come to the main contention, what do you want to prove?
So the grievousness of the matter. So the grievousness of the matter does not speaks reasonable that a single statement can turn Yashika back to her in-laws' house.
Objection, my lordship.
So if it was so grievous, if she was physically beating Yashika with a child, then I don't think so. A sane or a reasonable person, a prudent person, will let her own daughter to be lived there in the same house.
But the prosecution has already tried to establish the fact that there were various circumstances leading to this untoward incident which happened, and not once, but earlier there was a consumption of poison incident.
Yes, sir. After the poison incident, I'm talking about.
So don't you think these circumstances would be going against your client?
Why?
So whether the circumstances are enough to prove that led to the incident? What is your take on
My
that?
lordship, we just wanted to show the fact.
So I had my in my closing
The
statement. I
decorum
will.
should be maintained in the court. Huh? This should not be pointed out by the
Yeah,
counsels, by the
cross
teams.
connection, cross discussion.
Counsel, I will in my closing statement. I will tell the
I
proposition.
request the court officer to see this, huh? Because I cannot see the. So maintain the decorum of the court. Yes.
In my closing statement, I will let you know the proposition of why I'm asking about these things.
No, I just asked the contention, the negotiations question you asked her.
Yes.
The father.
Yes, sir, it is not reasonable enough.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? You
Yes,
want to
one
ask?
more. You said that Yashika was subjected to physical torture. Do you agree?
Yes.
Before she, right before she, like, or right, not right exactly, but before she committed suicide, was she subjected to physical torture?
Yes.
Before she committed suicide. Point to be noted, before she committed suicide, Yashika was subjected to physical torture. Point to be noted.
Okay. Thank you. Whatever oppositions you have noted down, afterwards, while closing your thing, you have to say. Yes, Defense Counsel.
Good afternoon, Your Lordship. Myself, Shabur Dotto. I am here the counsel of the defendant, representing my client, Rajiv Menon. So, Your Lordship, I seek permission from you to go
Yes,
forward.
You can proceed.
So, Your Lordship, firstly, I will, the series of events which happened, which are the real facts, I will try to prove one by one. Firstly, the proof of insanity. My Lord, we are, the Yashika Singh was insane. How we are proving? Firstly, my Lordship, the complaining nature of Yashika Singh. She used to complain of trivial and useless matters every day to my Rajiv Mehra, to my client Rajiv Mehra. Because, like one example,
Is there any evidence of the insanity of Yashika?
I am proving that. One by one. Firstly, the complaining nature, my Lordship. She used to victimize herself. So, just now, Umadevi told that the complaints which Umadevi got from Yashika was the fact that she has a complaining nature every time, like a mother. She was a mother of 1.5-year-old son. She was a daughter-in-law. She was also a wife. So what 3-year-old?
Carry on.
She was.
Carry on.
She was.
Your time. Prosecution.
She had some duties. She had some responsibilities. So the nitty-gritties of the family matters. Why should she complain to the mother? This was the first thing which basis that she has a complaining nature. The second is consuming poison.
Yashika, what the parents told to this court, Yashika complained of the cruelty inflicted on her. She didn't complain about the every nitty-gritty of the family.
If you kindly go to the facts of the police report.
I'm talking about the statement given by the witnesses.
Yes, just now she had claimed those, and beforehand she had claimed in the facts of the case, in the statements it is mentioned that she used to complain.
In Mr. Dawson, you're claiming that the victim was insane.
Yes.
Have you done with the proof?
No, Your Lordship. I will be proving. The first point is victimizing herself in the complaint. Second is consuming poison. She was a mother of a young infant. And how can a mother, a sane mother, think of consuming poison on the first hand? A logical parent, what a logical mother can do, she would firstly go to the court and ask for a mutual separation. And Bajrang Singh, who is claiming that he has given 10 lakh rupees, can't he maintain their daughter and grandson?
But don't you think all those incidences that happened to Yashika, cruelty, harassment, mental
Your
trauma,
Lordship, I will be proving that after this.
prove that?
Yes, so you want me to prove the
Because the
insanity or
prosecution always tried to establish the fact that there were a series of incidences
yes,
which meant to say
The false
cruelty
allegations,
or
yes,
harassment
yes.
inflicted on their daughter, right? Which led to the incident, even consuming poison before and afterwards, choosing death over anything, right?
Lordship, I will then go to directly physical and mental torture, which the cruelty they are saying. I will go
You
directly.
mean to say there was no cruelty at all?
I will say, I will prove it. I will prove it. I will prove it.
Consumption of poison episodes. What is your contention in consuming poison?
How can a mother, a same mother, firstly having a son of so infant, he was so young, can think of consuming poison on the first hand?
So you are indicating against the normal.
So defense counsel.
Yes,
Normal
absolutely.
state, right? Doubting normalcy. She was not normal, right?
She was not normal,
This is
and case was yes.
Okay. Next.
Yes. Now, physical and mental torture, what your lordship you pointed out. Firstly, the first report of police regarding the consumption of poison, no mention of physical cruelty. In the first, the report, which was the report given after the consumption of poison, no mention of physical cruelty was in the report. So, police had investigated, but where is the proof? No proof.
This consumption episode was reported to police?
Yes, absolutely. Police report is also there.
Could you just bring to the knowledge of the court? Where's the report?
The report hasn't been.
You have mentioned counsel. You have mentioned there is a report. Where is that report?
The report hasn't been given to us. The report hasn't been. It is in the fact that report has been given, but the report has not been.
Could you just bring to the notice of the court which para, which fact?
Which para is reporting
Yes,
is
absolutely, we agree. The police had also claimed that the poison was mistakenly consumed.
First reporting incident.
Yes.
Then we go to explanation.
Which line, which para?
15 of the version.
The facts of the case, page number 15.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Means in the middle of the page, it is given this. The matter was reported to the police by Mr. Bajran Singh. To the police report, it is reported here. Police was reported, and the report was there. Investigation was done. No cruelty, no physical cruelty, and the prosecution is alleging. The second point, my lord, the
Where is
fact.
copy of the report?
I am giving.
Police report.
There is no
Police report, my lordship, it hasn't been given to us. It hasn't been given. We are also demanding the police report, but it hasn't been given. I think manipulation has been done
By whom?
by the prosecution. I think because by the prosecution of police. I am
Is the
thinking of it.
prosecution the custodian of that report?
Maybe, your lordship, but I am not sure of that.
Police has taken the report, right? It's
The
available
police has
report.
investigated and made a report.
Yeah, so who will give the report?
The police
will give the
only.
report.
No, the police only, but police hasn't given it.
It is council's duty to bring that report, right, from the police authority. Not
Yeah.
prosecution will not give.
But it is Bajran Singh's complaint. Bajran Singh had a first hand complaint to the police. So it is in the contention of the prosecution to bring the report. So Bajran Singh gone to the police after consumption and he only complained. So the prosecution is liable to bring the report.
Which police station?
That I am not aware of it. That prosecution only knows. Because they, the
But was
Bajran
aware
Singh
of
knows.
the police station also, where the FIR, the charge sheet.
If I did absolutely, your lordship.
Now you are claiming on the basis of this report, you are claiming that no cruelty was mentioned. But where is that report? How
My lordship, the cruelty
until
first point.
unless court access that report, what is the veracity of that report, whether cruelty was mentioned or not?
My lordship, it is given.
If you are able to produce that report, court will consider that whether the
My lordship,
cruelty was
firstly,
involved or not.
Bajran Singh, the prosecution side, went to the police station and complained all the
Okay,
matters.
next point.
Yeah, so next point is, your lordship, the fact that the child was born from Yashika's womb was absolutely sound and normal. If physical cruelty was done to Yashika, how can the child be sound and normal? She was born.
There is no relation. There is no relation with
Do you
the
have medical report
birth of the
against
child.
that?
There
Do
is
you
no
have-
relation at all. If a cruelty has been, mental torture is there. How can the birth of the child is
Mental and
affected?
physical, your lordship, they have claimed
Both,
mental and physical.
both mental and physical cruelty, physical harm does not prove that the child will be deformed or anything like that.
But there
How
are
do you? I am not getting your statement.
Counsel, you are a lawyer, you are not a physician. Do you have a report, medical report? That because of torture, in spite of this torture,
How will
there was a
cogent
healthy
evidence?
baby. There was a healthy baby.
The baby is healthy. The prosecution is not saying that our grandson is unhealthy.
Court is interested to know how to reach to this conclusion that in spite of beating or in spite of quality, there was a healthy baby. And therefore, there is a presumption there was no proof. This is your argument, right?
This is one of the points.
Where is the police? Where is the medical report?
The son like 1.5 years. There
Okay,
are
anything else you want to say?
Yes, so in the third point, firstly, the Mehras are manufacturers of streets. They are very well reputed in the society. Firstly, if you know the well-reputed families, they are very concerned about their good reputation. My reputation is go vain in the society, then how can, like, I am a reputed person. So, in the first place, nothing of mental or physical.
The last 1 minute I'll allow just to know, like the prosecution has tried to establish that there was a dowry there. What is your take on that? Because they claimed, the prosecution claimed and almost proved it, that soon before the death there were tortures which led to this incident.
My lordship, they haven't proved it. I am proving it how there was no dowry demand.
But he did not, right?
No,
you could not disprove the fact.
Yes.
You could not disprove the fact that there were no torture or harassment or anything of that sort, which ultimately led to this mishap.
There was no physical torture, your lordship.
No, what about dowry?
Dowry, yes, your lordship, dowry. There is no proper evidence that there was any written complaint by Yashika for her in-laws regarding the claim of dowry. Has they ever reported to the police that dowry demand was there?
Whether your client received 10 lakh and gold or not?
The 10 lakh and received, Basant Singh only told that there was no receipt. So where is that?
So you are negating that you haven't accepted, right?
We haven't demanded only. There is no question of accepting.
No acceptation.
No demand, no acceptation. So no contract.
Okay, time is up.
Chief examination.
Now, Chief examination.
Your lordship, I would like to.
Whom you want to call?
Your lordship, I would love to call Ashish Gujral. Sukant Singh, the neighbor.
Neighbor.
Second neighbor or first?
Second neighbor.
Yes, you can proceed, counsel.
Grateful, your lordship. Mr. Sukant Rajput, did you know of any drinking habit of Rajiv? Point to be noted. There was no drinking habit.
So you are not aware of that. That may be. Might be. Yeah. Please next.
What
Your
exactly?
Your first condition is not accepted. Second.
I haven't claimed. They have claimed that drinking habit was there. I haven't taken up the drinking habit.
There may be a drinking habit.
There may be, but there is no evidence that there was drinking habit. There was no liver, that no report has given that no health, the health of
They are just claiming
that there was drinking habit.
But your witness is not confirmed.
No aware. She was not aware. But actually, they are not giving any medical report also that that Basant Singh's liver was infected or something for that. Because it is not proven. My lord, it is not proven. Basant Singh only, Rajiv Mehra, sorry, your lordship, I am apology, Rajiv Mehra. Here is Rajiv Mehra. There only.
Your witness is not aware about that.
She is not. He is not aware. What exactly happened on the afternoon on 14th April 2022?
I heard Ashish Gujral asking for help from the Mehra residence. So I rushed inside the Mehra residence and I saw a
Which incident you are talking about?
Which report? Ashish Gujral was asking for help, and then
from
only
the
you reached.
Mehra residence. Yes.
Then only you reached.
Yeah.
Okay, please go ahead.
I heard him screaming, so I reached there.
Your entry in this scene post Ashish Gujral, right?
Yes.
Firstly, ask you. Yes, sir.
So I went there and I saw Yashika covered in a blanket and the fire was dozed off at that time. The house was intact but the kitchen area was messed up.
It was messed up.
Yes.
What did you find in the kitchen? How would you describe the messing up of the kitchen?
There were blankets and there was a fire. Like the water was thrown up to doze off the fire. And Yashika was covered in a blanket and the fire was dozed off.
Okay, Mr. Counsel, next.
Yes, your lordship. How do you know about the internal matters of the family? You were close to the matters?
I live just beside them, just next to the door, and I have a cyber cafe in the ground floor of my building. So I
How many
heard
years do you know them?
same locality from a very long time.
What is the year? Roughly, what is the year? How long?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
So,
And you were a close friend of the family, right?
yeah.
Close friend for 10 years.
Not really close friends, but yeah, I had a few talks with
They
them.
used to know each other.
So you are quite aware of these cruelty things and all that which was inflicted on.
No. But I heard a few calls, like there was some tension between them, but I don't know if that was in between Yashika and
And you said you were a very good friend of your Rajiv and this Mehra family.
Not very good.
Now, for 10 years, I can suppose that there is a very good relationship.
So you had no much interest in that family, what is going on in internal matter, right?
Yeah.
So we can presume that you are not aware about mitigating all those problems. You are just outsiders and just have overlooked it,
Yeah, but I heard a few calls, so.
which you never inquired, and not interested to inquire.
Your Lordship, there are a few questions as time is going up. We want to call the next witness. Thank you so much.
So who is the next?
Ashish Bhushan, the first name.
Another neighbor.
Yes, Your Lordship.
First neighbor, right?
Yes, Your Lordship. So, Mr. Ashish Bhushan, you were living beside the Mehras.
Yes.
So, I suppose you were very much closely related, means you know them, na?
I have cordial relationship with them, but I'm not so much engrossed in their
How long?
family.
How long? This relationship, how long?
How long you know that?
It's been years. It's been years I know them.
Years means how many? How many years?
15
15 years.
to 10 years.
He is different. Sukhan Singh Rajput is different and Ashish Bhushan
This
is
is why
different.
she, 15 years.
Yeah. So, Mr. Gujral, in your statement to the police, you mentioned of mental trauma. Mental trauma of. Oh yeah, sorry. So, what did you know about the drinking habits of Rajiv Mehra?
No,
There was no drinking habit, na?
no, I don't know about that.
Achha. Okay. So, when did you call the police?
I called the police at 4:30 p.m. on 14th April 2022.
So, did you, as you have a good relation with the Mehras, did you ever hear anything of a demand of dowry? There was no demand of dowry, na?
No, I don't know.
Why do
about
you
it.
notate your option?
What profession you
I don't
carry
know.
on for your survival?
I have a sweet shop in the neighborhood.
So despite you are having a full-time sweet shop, you are very much interested in this Yashika's family.
That is why I'm saying that I don't know about it.
But you are aware that there was no demand of dowry and be very...
I said I'm not aware of it.
That means
But there was no. Your
There can
statement
be
was
there.
there was no dowry.
There can be.
There can be,
There
but
can
I'm
be.
not aware
Maybe.
of it.
Right?
Maybe.
Maybe, but I'm not
You
aware
cannot
of it.
sure, right?
You are
Yeah,
not sure
I'm
about
not
counsel,
sure.
you are not sure about the fact that whether the witness is saying that whether she is not confirmed, right?
Yes,
Either it is confirmed
May or maybe.
may or may.
Next.
Was Rajiv happy to the marriage? Was Rajiv happy?
In public, they looked like a normal couple only, and of course, they had a child, so they were happy.
Are you aware of?
Whether Raju was fond of sweets and how many times he used to really fond of sweets?
I don't think so. I refuse advocate. He never came to my shop.
Never complained of.
No, not that much.
But you said you have a good relationship with
As a
him.
neighbor, of course, as a neighbor, I have a good relationship, but it's not mandatory he needs to come to my sweet shop for
But
that.
you know almost everything about the...
No, I don't know much about them. I'm more in good.
Okay, carry on counsel.
You spent 15 years you know each other, but you have not much knowledge about this family, right?
Yeah, they were the
Yeah,
main
this
neighbors.
is over.
Achha, how are you aware of how Yashika was treated by her in-laws?
No,
How
I'm
can
not
she be
aware.
aware of this also?
She is not aware about
No, I'm not aware of
Yeah,
it.
I'm just asking you.
She is not aware
No,
about
no,
this.
I'm not aware of it.
So, what is your opinion that?
Mr. Counsel, this is a chief examination. This is your witness.
Yes, you
And
can.
your witness is not supporting the contention.
Maybe confusion.
So that means we are not accepting all this.
Your Lordship, if we come to Miss, other than this competition, if we come like this witness things are given The facts and everything has been given.
No,
to us.
those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, anything else you want to ask?
So, have you ever talked to Yashika personally?
No, I haven't talked to her.
Have you ever heard of anything of like mental insanity or something of Yashika?
No, I haven't heard of it, but of course she never mixed up with the neighborhood people and she seemed a bit off.
Bit off. Point to be noted. Your Lordship, point to be noted. Thank you.
Madam? Thank you, you can leave.
Thank you. Grateful, Your Lordship.
Now cross by the prosecution.
Your Lordship, I would like to summon Sukant Rajput.
The neighbor.
Neighbor.
You want to summon?
Sukant Rajput. Sir, I would, Your Lordship, I would like to call Sukant. First question, what do you do?
I have a tribal camp.
How are you related to the Mehraj and how is your relation with them?
I'm the neighbor of them and I live just next door, like, in the same locality. We have been living in the same locality for a very long time. I have a cordial relationship.
You have a cordial relation with them as well as Yashika and her family?
Not
So-
birth family, but the matrimonial.
Matrimonial house. You had good relations, I guess, because you were the first one to call her father once the incident took place, right? Then how do you say that you did not have good relations with them when you were having the phone number being a neighbor?
I had the phone number because we have been living in the same locality, and then as he is his father, so I thought it was good to call him.
Point to be noted, Your Lordship. He used to live in the same locality as Mehraj, but he had the number of Yashika's parents. So that states that she had good relations with them as well. How often did you pay visit to them?
Not visit, but we used to meet a few times because like if we are passing by then we talk.
Just like passersby, right?
Are you aware of those incidences which the prosecution is claiming is cruelty inflicted on Yashika soon before her death?
No, but I heard about poisoning, like when she had been poisoned.
Couldn't you find out the reason why suddenly that happened in that family?
No, I was
That all of a sudden Yashika had to consume poison?
No, I was not.
How long were they married?
We married in 2018,
How long?
4 years.
Point to be noted, Your Lordship. It's under 7 years.
Objection, my Lordship. How this is really? How this is really?
I'll come to the fact.
What is the contention, counsel, about this point, about 4 years?
Section 304B.
Yeah, carry.
Sir, do you know about the mental torture that was meted out to Yashika by Rajiv Mehra and his mother?
No.
It's a contradictory statement because in a written statement, I can show you, sir. I can show you, Your Lordship, that he's written that it was clear that their family had some tension regarding their marriage and there were regular verbal fights between the members of the family and the said marriage. Things spiraled out of control when she consumed poison. Sir,
Yes,
this clearly
Mr.
states.
Rajput, under 161 you have given this, that you were quite aware of those verbal fights, but now when I asked you that you said there was no such thing which you were aware of.
I don't really know if mental torture, but as I said before, I heard some few quarrels between them, but I don't know if it comes to mental.
Your Lordship, in written statement is clearly stated that she was aware of the regular verbal fights between her and the members of this family.
Objection, my
She
lord,
is
she's claiming
contradicting. You are the statement.
Now wait. Yes, you carry on.
Yeah.
Don't listen to others what they are saying, and
So this is a big point
defense,
to
your
notice.
turn will come. Yes.
Your Lordship, she stated in her arguments or in her statements that he stated in his statements that Yashika always seemed to be a bit off whenever she was going out, which clearly proves that she was mentally tortured and she was not in the right frame of mind.
Objection, Your Lordship. How can this prove?
You carry on, counsel. What do you see, Mr. Rajput, on that day of the incident, on this 14th April 2022? What did you see? Did you see anything that day? What happened on the day of incident?
As Ashish Gujral was trying to break the door and enter into the house, I presume that there was no one at the home, so I rushed and went inside and
Ashish was trying to break open the house.
like enter the house.
You saw that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then?
In previous occasion, you told that you reached the scene post Ashish Gujral. So now you are saying you have seen breaking the.
Yeah, after he entered, he was asking for help, so I went inside and
Statements are contradictory. Would you like to agree? In the previous occasion, you mentioned that you reached after Ashish Gujral entered. Now you are saying you have seen Ashish Gujral breaking the door.
Okay, what else you have seen that day? You saw Ashish Gujral entering the house by breaking open the window pane and all. Then what next?
then he tried to doze off the fire, and there was a blanket. Yashika was covered in a blanket.
So you saw Yashika when she was in fire.
Not in fire, but in the blanket she was covered.
Your Lordship, I have a contradiction that the blanket was covered by Ashish Gujral and not by her, not by him. So, Your Lordship, he
didn't say that he covered. He saw.
Okay.
He saw.
Okay. Yes, sir. Your Lordship, my final question would be: are you aware that Yashika had consumed poison?
Yes, in the neighborhood it was a discussion like Yashika consumed poison.
So why were you surprised that she had come back from her maternal home to her in-laws' house?
Because it's a big deal, like why would she consume poison?
So that clearly proves that she had been subjected to mental torture and harassment.
How does this prove? Objection, Your Lordship.
In her in-laws? That when you were surprised of her coming back, that clearly proves that she was subjected to cruelty and harassment in her in-laws.
I couldn't get your contention.
Your Lordship, my contention is that after she consumed poison, she was there at her parents' house for a month, and then she came back after a month. Why was he surprised on her coming back? Why was he surprised?
If she's going back, like it is a big deal, if one is consuming poison, so I don't know what happened in their internal.
Your Lordship, witness herself is saying that it's a big deal of her coming back after her consuming poison. That's a contract.
This surprise, you got surprise, is it in a positive sense or in a negative sense? Surprise in what sense you meant in your statement? I think the prosecution is trying, yes, prosecution counsel. This surprise, you want to focus on what? In what perspective you are saying this? Negative or positive? What? The court is not getting it.
Sir, I want to know why was he surprised? In a negative aspect or a positive aspect? If in a negative if it's a negative aspect, then we can get to
After
know.
this incident, this consuming poison took place, then she, after being treated well and she, after getting well, she is returning back.
Yes, but why was he surprised in the first place? Because he is agreeing that she had been subjected to cruelty.
How? No objection, Your Lordship. How is this?
Yes, Mr. Rajput, just could you just...
I think she went back.
You thought that she won't come back again, as in so much of torture, so much of cruelty?
I didn't give it a thought, but she.
Then what made you surprised by seeing her coming back to the matrimonial home? Was there anything surprising that Yashika is coming back to her matrimonial home? So as being a neighbor, how you got surprised?
Because there were some discussions in the neighborhood that Yashika went back home because she was.
So this was
Permanently she went back. You heard that. Permanently she went back and she won't come back.
Permanently, but she was ill, so she went back for some days. But she was.
I mean, she's now well. She came back. So what made you surprised? That is a question which I think the prosecution is trying to ask.
Absolutely, Your Lordship.
Yes. So what made you surprised seeing Yashika after being normalized, after being well treated, maybe, which we are also presuming after getting the treatment, maybe she is coming back to her matrimonial home. So what made you surprised as a neighbor? You should be happy when the wife is coming back to the matrimonial home, isn't it?
Lordship.
Yes.
No answer is
What is your
no answer is coming.
take on that? The court would like to know, and we will end here with your cross.
Your Lordship, I have few.
Wait. Would you like to throw any light upon this thing? Surprise? No?
Surprise element. What was the surprise element?
Because we get to know from the statement.
Just because she came back, I was a bit surprised.
Why?
Your Lordship, that really shows that she had been.
No.
Your Lordship, why?
Silently. The counsel please be.
Your Lordship, why was she surprised? That means she had been aware of the facts of the harassment that has been taking place.
So could you throw any light on this, or I would move forward? The court is wasting time. Yes, Mr. Rajput, tell me. Would you like to throw any light upon this surprise issue, or no? Okay. Thank you. Yes. Now I think closing statement. No. By defense.
Your Lordship, I may start.
Yes.
Okay. So firstly I want to say that dowry demand allegation is only made by Bajrang Singh and Uma Devi. There is no other evidence, no documentary evidence, no statement of witness, no other testimonies by any other third party apart from that household of Singhs who claim that dowry was demanded and was given. Secondly, the dowry demand and giving of dowry is not even specific. There is no receipt. First of all, they don't even remember the date of when the dowry was given. If 10 lakh amount is a huge amount for a middle class family, why wouldn't they know the date? Why wouldn't they know the form of which they gave the dowry? Second of all, I want to say that the motive. Bajrang Singh was from a middle class family and Rajiv were a very high class family. Why would the high class family first of all marry a girl from middle class family and ask for dowry from them? They could have done otherwise. Secondly, Sushila, who was
how could you differentiate this middle class and upper class? How could you say that?
Sir, it is in the facts.
Yes, Rajiv was
Steel business. He was established.
Manufacturing steel business,
Yes.
and Mr. Bajrang.
Middle class. It was written in the facts.
Okay, from there, you are claiming that they are middle class and they are upper
Sir,
class.
it is written in the facts.
Yes.
Okay.
Now proceed.
Sushila, who is also a daughter-in-law of the same family, she had no complaint regarding any cruelty, no complaint about any dowry demand. Then why would only Yashika be demanded dowry from? Second of all, Uma Devi and Bajrang Singh both claimed here in this testimony that before the suicide, she had been inflicted with physical torture and beating. But the substantive evidence of autopsy report clearly states that there is only thermal burns and that is the only injury which is stated in the autopsy report. There is no physical injury. I would want to say the statements made in the court were false and has been deliberately made to mislead the court. Secondly, suicide. Yashika committed suicide, and as Sukant Rajput and Ashish Gujral both said that they had seen some eerie form of behavior from Yashika, and I would like to point out this fact that Yashika committed suicide. Both of the attempts was after the child was born. So I would like to lead upon the postpartum syndrome that females are having. In the news, it has also come out that 33% of Indian women who suffer through postpartum, they are committing suicide because they cannot handle the transition between the womanhood and mothership. The role transition had left an impact on Yashika, and that is the reason why Yashika's mother-in-law said that Yashika was not taking care of the child because she couldn't handle the transition, and all these suicide attempts were after she had given her birth. Also, my lord, I would like to say that from the trial we understood that there is lack of investigation, there is lack of evidence. So there is a false allegation only by Uma Devi and Bajrang Singh, and there was no other party who claimed that there was a dowry demand. So with that speck of doubt, I want to say that the defense should be given the benefit of doubt, and no innocent shall be proven guilty unless proven beyond reasonable doubt. So there is a doubt of the mind of the court, and I want you to acquit Rajiv and Sushila Mehra on basis of the doubt, because they are innocent and they cannot be convicted just because there is lack of evidence or wrong allegation. Thank you.
Your Lordship, there are a few questions I would ask from the defendants. That they are stating that dowry.
My Lordship, we have certain objections on whatever learned statement is claiming.
I think the objection for the closing is done. No?
I want to just give my closing statement.
Sir,
Is the closing?
closing by the defense to prosecution to he the prosecution to. After this self it was
You present in the form of closing
Court
statement.
officer is now the closing statement of the.
You present in the form of closing statement.
Closing statement. Your Lordship, dowry. They are saying that dowry was not on record. Dowry is never.
Wait.
Sir, yes,
Court
sir.
officer.
Continue.
Okay. Yes, prosecution.
Your Lordship.
What is your closing statement and whatever opposition you had?
Dowry, whenever it's given, it's never on record. Giving dowry is a crime, and it's never on record. How are we claiming that that Yashika Mehra is insane? You have grounds, and if you knew that Yashika Mehra is insane, in the first place, why did you get them married? Why did you get Rajiv Mehra married to Yashika Mehra? The Sushant Gujral, who was the neighbor, was contradicting his own statement because he was unaware of the facts. Firstly, he stated that he was aware of the trivial fights or the major fights that have been taking place between the family members, but when he was got for the witness, he contradicted his own statements. Fourth, there were no medical statements or no police reports. And when the police reports, it was on the defense to get the police reports to court. And how would the neighbor come to know about the drinking habits? Neighbor isn't supposed to know that. Neighbor is supposed to know only the external factors or whatever they hear.
Okay, apart from your oppositions, now come to your closing statement. You just establish your claim.
With immense sorrow, my client is approaching the court that since her daughter died, falling prey to the constant physical, mental torture meted out to her. Your Lordship, she was not even spared during her pregnancy when a woman needs utmost care. Her infant son has been left behind to be taken care of. At such a young age, the child needs the special care of her mother. But with deep anguish, my humble petition states that the deceased child will not get the love and benevolence that it deserves to get at such a tender age. In light of the facts of the case and issues raised, I would like to pray for the following reasons. Declare Rajiv Mehra and Shivani Mehra to be guilty for the abatement of suicide of Mrs. Yashika Mehra. Declare Rajiv Mehra and his parents to be liable for dowry demand, cruelty, and domestic violence against Mrs. Yashika Mehra. Declare that this case has sufficient grounds to invoke provisions under Section 304B of the Indian Penal Code of 1860. Declare that there is no element of suspicion or involvement of third party in this case. Much obliged, Your Lordship.
Thank you.
Participants of the audience. Wait, please, let the team. The case presented before the court is by state of West Bengal versus Rajiv Mehra, and 1822 is the prosecution, 1917 is the defense.
The Lordship, the prosecution would only like to submit that this case is a clear-cut case of husband suicide, of dowry demand, of cruelty, and also of dowry debt. Your Lordship, getting into the issue of the case firstly, if you look at section 490 of cruelty, then according to the statement of the witnesses of Mr. Rajiv Mehra, he himself accepted the fact that an amount of rupees 10 lakhs was given by Bajrang Singh, and that too at the time of the marriage. His contention that the amount was given to open a sweet shop stands very weak, as there was no such circumstance or no such evidence that they tried to open any sweet shop or do any such kind of a thing.
Why you are referring to 498 here, counsel?
I don't do it. Moreover, Your Lordship, because I'm also proving dowry demand. Moreover, Your Lordship, Rajiv and his parents, they were also completely silent in their statement under section 161 of the CRPC about the gold that was also given. They were completely silent in the back of the gold. They mentioned about the cash, but they did not mention anything about the gold, which also amounts to their implied acceptance to the fact that the gold was accepted by them. Your Lordship, they being from a reputed family, from a good business background and a rich background, it did not fulfill their urge for dowry, and thus they demanded more, and due to which the harassment and because the Mehras were rich, because they were wealthy, they were rich, had an established business of steel, and they demanded more dowry. It did not fulfill their urge for dowry, and they demanded more, and due to which harassment in the form of mental and physical abuse was meted out to each other. The statement of witness of Uma Devi Singh under section 161 and also the statement of witness of Bajrang Singh collaborates on this fact. Your Lordship, as far as section 304B of IPC is concerned, dowry debt, the council would like to submit that the woman, firstly, one of the essentials of this criteria is that the woman must have been subjected to cruelty or harassment at the hands of her husband, and that should be soon before her death. Your Lordship, on that very same day when this entire incident happened, Yashika had a fight with Rajiv. She was frequently harassed due to dowry demands, and if we connect this
same day means the date of his suicide. Same day means
on the date of her suicide. she was frequently harassed due to dowry demands. And Yashika, we all know that she was not. Moreover, the state of mind of Yashika was also confirmed when she was not willing to go out with Shivani Mehra as well as Sushila Mehra. This also proves the state of mind on that day, Your Lordship. And one more thing is that the absence of the child, this has to be taken into account. On that day, the child was not present in that house. And a mother, being a mother of a 3-year-old child, she would definitely know where her child is. Why wasn't she present? This also arises another question here. As far as section 306, the abetment to suicide is concerned, firstly, the proof that Yashika had committed suicide. The clear-cut proof is that the door was locked and the neighbors, they broke open the door. They broke open the door, they entered, and then they tried to save Yashika.
Where did you find this fact?
The statement of witness.
Which witness? That they had to break open the house and they entered.
Of the neighbors.
I think Mr. Rajput's you are talking about his statement, but he saw someone else breaking open the house and entering the.
That's the door was broken open. That is my entire point. That
the witness Rajput, Mr. Rajput said that in his 161, he has said that he saw someone else, one of the other neighbors, who broke open the house and entered.
Yes.
But you said that Yashika was locked up and somebody came.
No, actually Yashika was inside the house. And the door was broken open. And the door was locked from inside.
Okay.
So this clearly proves that no one was inside the house. That is what my point is.
Okay.
Moreover, the alibi that had been given by Rajiv and Sanjay, that they were out of their house for their work, and the evidence of the movie tickets, that Sushila and Shivani Mehra had gone out for the movie, that is also there. Moreover, if you look at the statement of witnesses, Your Lordship, there is no hint at all of any third party who had come, or is it a case of murder? There is no hint of that. And even in the investigation officer report, in the charge sheet as well, there is no suspicion of a third party. So definitely we would like to submit that if the defense later on tries to get in the back of a third party, then definitely there is a point to be noted. As far as mens rea is concerned and the motive is concerned,
how do you substantiate all these incidences, all these circumstances ultimately led to the death of your client, right? The deceased.
yes.
So how would you substantiate that? Are there any cogent these circumstances are enough to show that beyond any doubt I would be convicting the.
But there was no person present at that time, so it cannot be a murder.
No, I'm not talking about the third party. I'm talking about the other contentions you put up. 304B or 498A,
Yes.
or now 306.
Yes.
So are you relying on those circumstances which happened one after the other to
Yes.
prove the guilt of the accused?
Absolutely. And one more thing is that as far as mens rea and the motive is concerned, the dowry here, as indicated in the case, is the main element of instigation, which abetted her to commit suicide, which was the main cause of abetment. And another thing, Your Lordship, is that what is the link between the harassment that was meted out to Yashika and her committing suicide? If you go by the statement of witnesses, it is clear, again, one of the neighbors, that Yashika had a fight with her in-laws on that very same day. They had a fight, and now for them it would not be, they would not be able to comprehend what was the.
Ashish Gujarat. You're talking about Ashish?
The beating on the same day, that incident, who has reported it?
One of the neighbors.
Who? You have two neighbors. And which page is mentioned? Who comes in can help?
Subhan Raj.
Which paragraph?
It was a generic statement whereby fights were there. But you mentioned, counsel, that on the same day there was a fight.
Incident. On the same day before her death.
So where is it?
This is generic one. Yes, you can proceed. I wrote.
Yes, so this is where I would like to end my discussion.
Chief examination, whom you want to call?
Also, we have to call Mr. Bajrang Singh.
Father.
What? Bajrang Singh?
Give this one. This is the thing. Court officer. Court officer. We are not calling this. Now the chief, yes. Opening statement, the details will be coming later after the loss.
Go ahead. Can you please introduce yourself in front of the
I am Bajrang Singh, father of Jessica.
On which day did the marriage take place? On which day did the marriage between Jessica Singh and Rajiv Mehra take place? On which day did the marriage take place?
It was on 24th April 2000.
Did you pay dowry to the Mehras?
Yes, I did pay dowry to them in terms of gold and 10 lakh in cash.
Was it a dowry or you gave some gifts to your daughter on the way, like out of love and affection?
It was a dowry.
How would you substantiate that?
Because like a week before the marriage, we had a conversation with Rajiv Mehra and he demanded for dowry.
That you have to give 10 lakh rupees and this cash on gold ornaments for on the date of marriage.
Yes.
So you gave that.
Yes.
Transfer cash or
It was in cash. 10 lakh was in cash and gold.
what do you do?
Yes.
What do you do? What is your profession?
I am a business.
Which business? What is your business?
No, I'm not a very good businessman.
What kind of business do you do?
I have a retail store. France.
Your yearly turnover?
Your rate of turnover is about 10 lakhs.
Yearly turnover 10 lakhs. And you managed to get 10 lakhs in one day.
Yes.
You managed to arrange 10 lakhs in one day.
So it was my saving which I had to.
You took from your savings. That means it, can you prove that you have taken this money from your
Well, I
bank?
have bank statements for that.
Do you have?
Yes.
Can councillors produce it? Bank statement? Please proceed.
What was the demand? Was it 10 lakhs or was it more?
They demanded for 20 lakhs.
20 lakhs.
Yes.
It is, this demand was only from Rajiv Mehra or his father or his mother? Only from
Well, the conversation was with Rajiv Mehra, but I think the invoice very was. Yes.
Our in-laws were there or not?
Rajiv Mehra came to me and asked me for 20 lakhs dowry and gold.
Okay, proceed from.
Did Rajiv Mehra contact you for more dowry?
You're
Yes,
asking
he did.
this after marriage?
After the ceremony?
Yes, he did. After marriage, he contacted me for more dowry.
Now, what is the amount this time?
He asked me for about 15 lakhs.
Additional 15 lakhs.
Yes, but I being a middle class businessman, I didn't have that much amount.
Did you verify what is the use of that fund?
So I didn't know.
You didn't know.
Can you please explain or describe the conversations that you had with Jessica or your daughter when she was in Rajiv Mehra's office?
Well, whenever I used to have conversation with my daughter, she was in a very disturbed state, and she used to complain about the inhuman torture she was suffering in my divorce.
When was Jessica's first child born?
It was on 16 September 2019.
And did you often go to visit your grandson?
Occasionally.
And did you bear the expenses completely?
Yes, I have to pay for the expenses of the birth of my grandson.
How much was the amount?
It was around 53,000.
On 17th December 2021, do you think that Jessica Singh truly consumed poison with the intention to commit suicide, or was it under a wrong impression?
I think, well, I don't think, I'm sure that she tried to commit suicide by
You're not sure.
No, I'm certain about that. She tried to commit suicide.
Now, what led to, like, there was an incident which happened few months back about consuming poison, right? So what steps you have taken after your daughter complained about such cruelty or such harassment or such mental trauma was there in the matrimonial home? So what steps as a parent you have taken?
Actually, I hope that, like, after the birth of my of Ajay, I thought that things will settle and the in-laws will be on their terms, but it was
But even after that incident of consuming poison by your daughter, you sent back your daughter to the matrimonial home? She went back?
Well, we had a negotiation and then.
What negotiation you had?
Like,
Who was there in that negotiation?
Rajiv Mehra was.
What negotiation?
Now, what was the conversation?
Yes, you cannot participate in
Medical
counseling. This is not allowed in the court. Whom? Timekeeper is not the person to allow you to go and speak. Yes. So you had a negotiation, right? Before sending your daughter back, after she recovered from the trauma and the poison episode. So what made you send her back?
The custody of the maid child was with the in-laws, and I don't think a mother can live without her son. So, and Yashika too, she was telling me that she was also willing to go to her in-laws.
So what made you convinced to send your daughter to him when she has already taken
That
suicide
threat was there, no? That threat was there.
I think there was for sure there was some mental stress in the in-laws, but the stress of the society is much more.
So you compared to send your daughter, right?
I didn't compare, but I didn't have any option as a father.
Okay, next.
What happened on the 14th of April 2022? 14th of April 2022 mentioned.
Well, around 4:30, I got a call from Shukan Rajput that my daughter was burning and they rushed her to Calcutta Medical College. When I reached there, she was in a very critical condition, and around 7:30 p.m. she was declared dead.
Did your daughter call on that day? To you or either your wife?
On 14th.
On the 4th day of incident?
When she called my wife.
Are you aware of that conversation?
Yes.
What?
My daughter was telling to my wife about she had a fight with her in-laws, and it was about dowry. And
Anyone else you want to cross?
Uma Devi, the mother
The
of
mother, yes. You can leave. You have 1 minute. She has 1 minute. 1 minute is there. Chief is going on.
After that, you will get up.
I apologize, Your Lordship, but actually yesterday we were doing it continuously. No problem.
You can do it afterwards. No issue.
No
You can again call him.
No problem, Lordship. Thank you.
Did you talk with Jessica regularly?
Yes, I did.
What was the mode of your communication?
Through phone calls.
What did she used to tell you?
She used to describe often about the tortures she was facing.
Okay, on the day of the incident, as per your husband, your daughter called you.
Yes,
Just
she did.
before the incident, before she burned.
No, she called me in the morning. We had a regular talk.
So what did she say on that day in the morning?
She told me about all the problems she was having and all.
So that was a normal thing. That was a regular talk,
No.
like just other day. Because
That
this
was-
cruelty, this harassment was a regular affair as per the council.
Yes.
So likewise, like other days, she just regularly, as a regular affair, she called you, right?
She called me and she mentioned about all the mental.
Did you find any depression, like she was about to commit suicide, like anything like that?
She was very sad about it, but I explained her and I told her that everything will be fine, and then.
Did you find any unnatural thing in her statements, like yes, he is about to do something untoward. He could not find that.
Where was the custody of the grandson?
To their in-laws.
Okay, time up. Next. Next now the cross.
You can say that her grandson was there with the in-laws.
With the in-laws.
You have said that the kid was not present in that home on the same day.
That he was not present in general levels. In general, there was the custody.
In that incident, the day of incident, whether kid was there with the in-laws or somewhere.
Not present. It was not.
But she said
That in general.
on the day of incident, where was your grandson?
No, it was with them.
On the day of incident, where was your kid?
On the day when
Okay. Now the defense.
Your Lordship would like to Bajrang as a
Please call Bajrang. Yes, defense counsel, you can proceed with the cross.
Yes. So you mentioned that dowry was demanded before the marriage. Am I correct?
Yes.
So you had the option to back out of the marriage. Why didn't you do so? Point to be noted, Your Lordship, that dowry was demanded a week before the marriage. So he had the option to not proceed with the marriage and back out of the marriage, but he still proceeded, which actually suggests that there was no involvement of dowry in it.
I didn't back out because Yashika was getting older. She was around 30, 31. And as a father, I had to. I didn't have any option.
So you think that Yashika would never have gotten a better groom who wouldn't have demanded dowry?
When I met the Mehras, I think they were I didn't have any question regarding that.
Moving on. Yashika used to inform you about the tortures, am I correct?
Yes.
And when was the last time she was subjected to physical torture? Did she ever tell you that?
Last time I think it was not. I was not maintaining a shield for that. It was on a
No, just a guess.
Yeah. I think on 14 April. I think because she complained to
April. That means on the day of the death.
Yes.
So there was no point to be noted again, Your Lordship, that there was no signs of bodily injury in the autopsy report, which suggests that there was no physical torture meted out on her on the day of the death.
When mental trauma can be counted as a...
I asked about physical torture.
When you say that what the contention is, counsel, like you want to prove what? Like was
I
the
want to
contention?
question the credibility of the witness, So, a fight took place on the day of the accident, right?
Which accident?
On
Day of incident?
Yeah, on the day of the incident.
14 April.
Yes.
Yes.
And did Yashika inform you that?
I have already mentioned that Yashika called my person.
But that is not mentioned in the statement of your witnesses. Why? How could you forget to mention such an important fact?
Well, I'm not an advocate or some investigator. I was a father and I lost my daughter. I don't think I'll be able to.
But you mentioned everything else.
Yes.
You mentioned everything else correctly.
There can be a lot of evidence for that, but what I mentioned that which I remember.
Okay, so you just mentioned right now in the chief that Yashika was in a very sorry state of affairs. That was quite evident when you had a conversation with her. I mean, she was very sad, right? So, why did you never confront the in-laws about it?
I did talk to Rajiv Mehra about that, and he was like, no, I was not like we had a normal relationship with her daughter, so I didn't want to get in between.
So you believed it?
What?
You took son-in-law's statement and you prioritized it more than.
No, I didn't believe. As a father, I didn't want to get into the relationship of my daughter.
But she confronted you, right? And she told you about the ordeals that she faced.
I think the marriage
And still
was
you believe the
duration was for 2 years. It was around 2 years time. It was.
I am Mr. Counselor not getting your contention here in this question.
Your Honor, I'm just trying to prove that there was no torture involved and the defendant is and the prosecution is lying.
Come up with some cogent questions, which relevant questions.
What is your contention on dowry was given? Do you agree dowry has?
As the prosecution has tried to establish this, so what is your take? You can ask regarding that.
Whether your client has received dowry?
No.
No. How do you prove that? That is the question.
Your Honor,
The prosecution is claiming that they given dowry. You are saying that no dowry was received. Prove it.
Okay, we proceed with your question.
What about cruelty? Next point.
I already established, Your Honor, that he just mentioned that on the day
You
of the
focused only on
incident.
physical torture, but cruelty doesn't denote or doesn't connote only physical torture. It can be a mental torture as well. So don't you think it falls under the purview of cruelty? If you see the section 498A.
Yes, Your Honor, but there was no form of cruelty involved because another daughter-in-law is again staying in the same house and she has not come up with the same accusation. And this is if that would have been so, this was the right time to actually raise her voice again, as well. But she did come up with this accusation, and it's only the accusation of the prosecution, and so.
Yes, your next question to the father.
Yeah.
Do you want to cross the mother as well? Yes, defense counsel. You want to cross Uma Devi also?
Yes, Your Honor.
Should we call her? Yes, call Uma Devi. You can leave.
Victim's mother.
Yes, counsel.
You mentioned in your chief examination while you were that you said that Yashika told you about the tortures and you told her back that everything is going to be fine. Right. So that actually suggests that the cruelty was not as there was no cruelty involved, and so that's the reason you thought that everything's going to be solved, right? And so you wanted to give time.
No, it was not about that. After the negotiation, we were planning to end the marriage. So on that basis, I told her that I did not continue.
You wanted to end the marriage?
Yes. This is not mentioned in the statement of the witness.
But why did you, after the incident, after the consuming poison incident, you sent back your daughter, right? After the negotiation, you sent back. Then if you were having this plan of ending the marriage, then why did you send back the daughter back to the matrimonial home?
Because my husband had actually talked to a lawyer friend and he suggested about taking a negotiation between them, and after that we were planning that the negotiation was a process in which we can finally step ahead and end the marriage in due course of time.
Yes, your next question.
And what was the negotiation all about?
It was about all the cruelty that was happening and all the mental torture, and we had strictly asked them not to, and they had agreed to it. And it was also about the dowry.
So why did you never go to the police? At that point of time, why did you ever go to the police?
To the police for what?
To file a case.
Did you complain? Like all these incidences happened, no?
After the poison, we
What
had,
steps you have taken as a parent? Like your daughter is being subjected to cruelty, such kind of harassment at the matrimonial home. So now what steps you have taken as a parent?
I was, after she
I believe the
consumed,
defense is trying to
Yes.
ask that only.
after she consumed poison, my husband had filed a police complaint and there were investigations done. So we just filed a
mention of that police complaint. Can you just
Then
bring the evidence of that police report?
we did file a police complaint.
That was after
Where
she
is that
conceived.
police report? What is the past police report? What is the copy of it? Do you have the copy?
No, Your Honor.
There wasn't filed. There wasn't.
Police investigation was done after she had consumed. And then
Now opening statement by the defense.
May I begin, Your Lordship?
Yes, you can proceed.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are here from the defense side today, and we have 3 issues that have been subjected to us by the prosecution, and we'll be dealing with each one of them through 8 points that have been established why the defense side is at upper hand and is not at all liable for the crime that has been committed. Firstly, they have come up with a charge of 306 of IBC, which is abetment, which clearly means that there has to be some sort of instigation or persuasion in nature which will lead to the individual's mindset, or in the present nature which will lead to the person actually having committed suicide. But here, Lordship, is the point where it is whatever evidence that they have brought to court today are all subjected to individual scenarios and individual subjected separate entities altogether. There is no scope of a continuous sense of instigation or persuasion that is being committed against her, which would lead her to actually go out and take her life in the first place.
Why you are saying so, counsel? Because the witnesses have already said in their statements
Yes.
that there has been, right after the marriage,
Yes, Lordship.
there has been a series of incidences which were taking place in the matrimonial home,
Yes, Lordship.
which actually subjected her to cruelty or maybe harassment.
Yes, Lordship.
So
So,
why you are saying this line that there is no connection or nexus in
uh,
all our individual stories?
yes, Lordship, because the simple reason being that the only amount of evidence that we are getting to pertain to this or to stick to this fact, there was a continuous census coming from both the witnesses of the prosecution and the parents of Yashika and Yashika herself. This is also a set where we are trying to establish the fact, Your Lordship, that the entire inconsistency in their statements, even now, Lordship, is prevalent throughout the entire case that has been established by the prosecution. We are trying to establish, Your Lordship, is that
You already crossed the
yes,
witnesses.
in which process we did establish that they are also inconsistent with the fact whether in what time or which frame of processes things have happened. They are inconsistent with that themselves also.
Time, where you want to focus here? Time means?
Not times, they're inconsistent with which event happened after which also. Because for example, right now, Your Lordship, when we questioned Uma Devi, they came up with the concept of filing a case after 17th December, once the poison incident already happened, because she said
But is it not disproving the fact that there were consistent amount of cruelty inflicted on the deceased? Is it disproving the fact whether he has complained or whether as a parent? The question even I asked.
Sir, I'm so sorry, Lordship. It actually proved that discontinuity is being tried to be proved by us. Simple reason why, that in the process where they are so not very vigilantly associated with the matter in the first place, because if there was a continuous cruelty happening, Your Lordship, they would have taken a step further along the line much before the 17th December incident. That was also because she was taken to the hospital in the first place. If a continuous cruelty was happening, then they would have taken a step much before that. Much before this.
You accept that there was a cruelty which is discontinuing in nature? Not
We are
continuous, but discontinuous. Irregular cruelty or not?
absolutely not, Your Lordship. We are trying to establish that because their statements or their facts they are trying to bring to the court about this is discontinuous, sir. That is why we are believing there is no cruelty at all there. So, may I proceed?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Lordship, the next point that I bring into concept is the burden of proof. The burden of proof in this case does lie with the prosecution, and here with the evidence that they are bringing to the court, none of them are circumstantial in nature, so we are not being able to connect them and get any real evidence out of it. The only reason being that they are all bringing in are just statements of witnesses with no hardcore proof into context. For example, even on the 17th December incident, when it happened and the case was filed.
I hope counsel you know, as per 114A of evidence law,
yes,
the court can presume when a prosecution is trying to say
yes,
there is actually there is a 113B or 114A.
Yes.
If you say that there is this incident, this cruelty, so the court is bound to presume that. But you have a chance.
Yes.
The onus now shifts to the defense also.
Yes, and that
to
is
disprove it.
Exactly, but we are just trying to prove when they are presuming this assumption. Along with that assumption, whatever evidence they are bringing into it are mostly hearsay. Because I'm just pointing out, Your Lordship, that witnesses that they have brought in, the father and the mother, none of them ever have witnessed any form of violence, either mental, vocal or physical, happening to their daughter firsthand. Whatever information they have received is from their daughter. And
why this incident happened of consuming poison? What led to this event?
Your Lordship, we believe from our point, Yashika herself was someone who was very short-tempered in nature, simultaneously believing to the fact that she was a little...
Can you substantiate this, that she was short-tempered?
We will, Your Lordship, when we bring our witnesses.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Lordship. So, when we bring into this contention that where we are trying to establish the fact that Yashika had a little anger issues, and she was short-tempered at minute levels because of even trivial matters, it would also lead us to bring to the fact that any type of consumption that she did on 17 was because of this in the first place. Moving along, Your Lordship, when I come to dowry, the main reason why a dowry is asked is because of greed of money. But I'm just trying to portray the economic status of both the parties in this case. Bajrang Singh was basically a middle-class stationery shop owner, and here is our defendant, who is a businessman of a steel manufacturing company. So this is a clearly proof that if he required any greater amount of money, he wouldn't have gone after someone a little, I won't say lower, but a little below his economic status, which would lead him to believe that if he required an amount of money, he would have targeted someone else. This clearly proves there was no dowry ever asked, not by the husband himself, nor by the in-laws in the first place. And this will also come to my point about sister-in-law. Your Lordship, there are two women in this family, two daughter-in-laws. The elder daughter-in-law as well, Sushila Mehra, who has been married for a few years more than Yashika has been. And they are at the same pedestal, they are the same part in the family. If there would have been any cruelty cheated, that would have happened to her as well. Even if not as much as the Yashika had claimed it to be. And simultaneously, Your Lordship, if this was, as my co-counsel said, if an instance like this has come up against the family, this would have been her chance to speak up. She did not do that at all, but she favored her family, who she has been living. This would also clearly try to prove, Lordship, what we are trying to prove is the simple nature that whatever communication or miscommunications have happened in this case is because of a problem between the family and Yashika at a very minute and internal level. We are trying to establish the fact that whatever problems Yashika was facing was because she was having a hard time adjusting. We are agreeing to the fact there were difficulties, but disputes were there from both sides. Not one party involvement at all. There was not everyone ganging up against Yashika, but Yashika was having a communicational gap established with the family, which they were trying to reduce. As clearly proves that these issues that we think she was facing was because there was also probably in our we suspect a third party involvement in it, which we'll try to establish, but we haven't had any more evidence about it. Moving along, we are here just trying to prove that our defense is not liable for this suicide in the first place. I'd like to bring my last point. That is, here both the witnesses who have spoken in favor of prosecution, Uma and Bajrang Singh, both of them are parents of the victim, deceased. They are both grief-stricken, as they have continuously said, that not being able to answer because they're grief-stricken. They are very sad, they're angry, and they're looking for someone to target. They are looking for someone to place the blame on. And that is why here they are trying to get their guilt out of their chest of whatever little they could have done for their daughter if because there's a third party involvement we suspect. And they are not taking a stand for that, resulting in them getting the entire blame done
Now
on
the
us.
court would love to hear the witnesses.
Absolutely, Your Lordship. I would like to bring my first witness, that is the... Thank you. I'll just let my face go.
Whom you want to call first?
Just one second. I would like to call Ashish Gujral, the neighbor. Yes.
First neighbor.
Yes, Your Lordship. The initial person who found the victim.
First neighbor, second neighbor.
Your Lordship, this is the neighbor who found Yashika in the first case, who established the incident.
You called, right? He's the only person who informed the parents about the incident?
No, Your Lordship, Shukant Rajput established. He informed Rajiv.
Rajiv. Okay.
May I proceed, Your Lordship?
Yes.
Thank you. Would you please introduce yourself to the court?
I'm Ashish Gujral and Rajiv.
Thank you. So, sir, you were the first person to hear Yashika screaming?
Yes.
Right. And you were the one who broke the door and entered the house?
Yes.
Correct. And when you entered, was there anyone else in the house?
No.
Point to be noted, Your Lordship, the simple reason that we are trying to establish here, that there was no family member present there at all. There was no one in sight. We cannot at all go to the verdict and go to the point of knowing that the family in any way instigated her or made her, do what she did. There was no one.
Instigation or these things cannot be culminated
absolutely.
by being there in the scene of event.
Absolutely, Your Lordship. We are just trying to prove that they were not there at all. So they were not aware of what was going on when this was happening. And simultaneously, there was no immediate instigation there. Not any immediate instigation there.
Is it an essential criteria to establish immediate instigation?
Sir, it's a I'm so sorry, Lordship. It's a viable thing to just put it in front of the court. We assumed.
Okay.
Thank you.
5 years.
5 years.
Yashika or Rajiv?
The Meheras. You know the family for 5 years.
No, I know Yashika for 5 years because they got married, but as we live in the same society,
How long do you know the parents?
20 years.
20 years.
Okay, counsel, we can proceed.
Thank you, Your Lordship. Okay. Can you please tell us who did you first call after you found her?
Rajiv, her
Thank you.
husband.
Thank you. And can you please tell us how is your relationship with Rajiv?
He's a very nice person and we used to hang out together.
And your relationship with Yashika? I would ask you to use a little court parliamentary words. It's no problem.
She was a quite good woman and she was friendly with the society members.
And could you please also explain in any way, in your own words, that any way to describe how she was as a person?
She was a quite nice person, but she was a bit short-tempered. She used to get angry in trivial matters.
Quite nice plus short temper. Both are there.
She was nice, but at times something happens, a quite little joke was cracked, and if she couldn't take that, she used to get angry.
But Mr. Gujral, you in your statement under 161, you never mentioned that you were the first person to call Rajiv. You just tried to call others around the area, in the neighborhood. You tried to call people, and then you called up the police first. In the statement, you have mentioned that. But now you are saying that you are the first person who called the husband, right? The deceased Rajiv, your friend, after all. Then why this contradiction, or why this inconsistency rather in your statement?
Family person, I called Rajiv first.
Did you inform the husband first, or you called the police first? See, Mr. Counsel.
Yes.
He's saying police. Yes. Now you can proceed with the other questions if you have any.
Yes, sir. Okay. May I proceed?
Yes.
Can you please tell us how often did you meet Yashika? How often did you see Yashika in the neighborhood?
Regular basis?
Okay. And did you ever notice anything unusual?
No.
Did you ever notice?
Are you talking about that particular incident?
No, Lordship, I mean in general, Lordship. Did you see anything unusual about her in any, I'm just repeating the question, did you see anything unusual?
No.
Nothing at all? Were there any signs of bruises or any signs that you noticed?
No, I don't know.
When? Which incident you talking
I'm
about?
talking about the general duration of 5 years that he has known Yashika. Because I'm just trying to establish the fact that as a neighbor, they might have also observed certain things that people often miss. And I'm just trying to establish they did not notice anything unusual.
Are you a next door neighbor?
No.
But as
How
they
far
are,
you
I'm so
stay?
sorry.
5 blocks away.
5 blocks away.
One plus.
So what do you do for your survival?
I'm a serviceman.
You're a serviceman. So where? Like you go to office every day, I believe. You go to office and this is a normal routine life, your nature of
Government.
so how can you, like, as a neighbor, like, how well she can keep these things as in observation, like I'm talking about how well he can observe all these incidences, what is happening in his neighborhood.
Because I'm just trying to establish.
Is it possible for a serviceman who is going 6 days a
as
week
he
to
mentioned,
office?
absolutely, Your Lordship. As he mentioned, he was a regular acquaintance with, he was a regular acquaintance with Rajiv, which would result in them often meeting at their places and each other's homes.
That maybe in the weekends, maybe a day or two, or maybe for in the weekend. Normally, I'm talking normally. When do we meet? Maybe in the weekends.
Correct.
For an hour or so.
Correct, Your Lordship.
So is that a time where is it possible for Mr. Gujral to know everything about what is happening in the family? Whether she is subjected to cruelty, whether she is having any injury, whether she is having any bruises and all, as you are asking.
Yeah, Your Lordship, duration of 5 years is quite a long time. Having been associated with them for this long and having noticed nothing unusual is what I'm trying to establish. Of course, they wouldn't meet regularly, but 5 years they would meet quite a lot of times, if I assume. Just trying to establish that.
You were not aware of any such incident, right, before? The strained relationship between the couple?
No.
Any, like, this dowry and all? Because you were quite used to visit the
You
house
found
and
a
all.
happy family, right?
Yes.
Can I bring in my...
She finds a happy family. Okay.
Can I bring in my next?
Next.
Thank you. The medical officer.
With the time,
Medical officer,
1 minute. So,
Can we not partake the time that they take to come in? If
you
that's
just consider. Consider that, right?
Thank you.
Directly ask relevant questions.
Absolutely.
Other point questions can be asked. You are calling the medical officer.
Yes, sir.
Medical officer.
We'll ask very short questions and to the point questions. So we'll keep it quick. So, could you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Dr. Murli Prasad Sharma and I'm the medical examiner in this case.
Can you please establish the cause of death?
The patient died due to hypovolemic shock as a result of third-degree burn sustained.
And what was the most burnt areas?
The chest, the upper and the lower limbs, excluding the palms and the soles.
Correct. And can you please give us a possibility, as your expertise witness, that why weren't the palms or the soles of the hand burnt?
So my guess is that she did not try to put off the fire, which is why her palms were intact.
Okay. And was there any other sign of physical abuse that you noticed?
No.
Any treatment scars or any form of bruises on the parts that were not burnt?
No.
Nothing at all?
Nothing.
And can you please establish to the court what is the time duration that it takes for a normal bruise or a normal mark to heal on the body?
About 4 to 6 weeks.
So therefore, if anything would have happened in the nearest time, it would have been noticed by you?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Lordship. That's
Okay, thank you.
May I take my seat, Your Lordship?
Yes, yes. Yes, prosecution.
The Lordship, the prosecution would like to call Ashish Gujral as the first cross-examination.
Ashish.
May I start, Your Lordship?
Yes, it's proceed.
At what time period did you see that the incident is taking place? Exactly 4 p.m. or is it approximately? Point to be noted, Your Honor. And you bugged off the door first person, right? Like you broke the door first.
Yes, I did.
So was there anyone present in that incident? Like if anyone is passing by and you just tried to call anyone?
I shouted there for help, and 2-3 neighbors came, and Sukant Rajput was also there. But I backed the door and I broke it.
Okay. And at 4 p.m. you were going to the grocery market you mentioned in the statement of
I don't
witness.
remember the time, but yes, this was the thing. I was going to buy some vegetables.
And which is right after the 5 blocks of your house? Like, is it near to the Rajiv Mehra's house?
Yes.
And did you try to save Yashika Singh? Like after bugging the door off, did you try to save Yashika Singh?
With the help of a blanket.
With only a blanket. And was she inside the kitchen or outside?
No, she was inside the kitchen.
She was only inside the kitchen. And was there anything present inside the kitchen? Like if the kitchen was messed up or only she was burning?
Actually, I didn't notice all these things because fire was, I had to extinguish the fire, right, and I had to save her.
No, so you tried to save her by blinding the blanket, right?
Yes.
So you know the usual circumstances which is going on in the kitchen? Because if the fire was put out in the whole kitchen, you could not have entered.
Actually, that time I had only this thing in the mind that I had to save her because she was burning there.
Let me rephrase my question. If the kitchen was burning, so you would not be able to enter the kitchen, right? So when you entered the house, so did you see the only Yashika burning inside the kitchen and everything was intact?
Yes, everything was intact.
Point to be noted, Your Honor.
Only that kitchen.
Okay. So whom did you call first after the incident?
Counsel, what is your contention regarding this?
My contention is regarding this is that why did not Ashish Gujral try to contact the in-laws or the husband at the very first moment? And he has claimed to, in the statement of witness that he was the only person who was present and he saw Sukant Rajput passing by, and that's why Sukant Rajput came running. And he also traveled with the deceased to the hospital. So if he traveled to the hospital, if he was traveling with the hospital, so it was his mere responsibility or mere duty that he was so very frequently related with Rajiv Mehra. So the first thing which would struck off in one's mind that I should call the in-laws.
In the chief, he has mentioned that he has informed.
In the chief, he has mentioned he informed the police.
Okay.
May I proceed? And how was your relation with the Mehras?
Quite good.
So you mentioned in January that when you visited the Yashika's house, like in Rajiv Mehra's house, the whole family was quite happy.
I did not say that I visited their house.
You mentioned just now in the chief examination that you visited frequently.
I said we used to hang out together. I did not mention that I visited their house.
You never visited.
I visited, but not on regular basis. I visited.
So after you break open the door, were you the only one who entered the house? At that very moment.
I was the one who entered first. But I did not see who entered after me.
Point to be noted, Your Honor. And was the child present in the house during the incident?
I did not find anyone else in Rashika.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to call the next witness as medical officer.
You can leave.
Where is the statement given by medical officer?
It's not there. The 161 it was not there.
For how many years are you there in the service?
A decade.
A decade. So you are obviously familiar with the bodies of burn victims.
Right.
And then, were there any defense marks or any bruises present over the body?
As I said in my chief examination, whatever.
Thank you. And was there any liquid substance present over the body? Like on the skin of the body?
No.
Point to be noted, Your Honor. And was there any kind of suspicion present on the skin of the body, like any skin tissues under the fingernail scrapings or any else hair of another body in the body of the deceased?
No.
Point to be noted, Your Honor. And did you find
What
anything?
do you want to establish?
In the memorial, the defendant has proclaimed that there is a mere suspicion of third party in the scene. And if there is a suspicion of third party in the scene, then before the incident took place, there should be a mere minimal connection of the skins or any tissues. And if anyone tried to kill the person, then there will be a contact or there will be a defense injury. As to if a person is trying to burn me, I will obviously, the first thing which I will do is to defend my body. So under that, there can be any bruises or there can be any fingernail scrapings under the skin.
Did the defense invoke that thing, the inclusion of a third party?
Involvement of third party?
Third party issue, but not in terms of murder, Your Lordship. We never convict or never try
Have
to
you
explain.
invoked this issue of
That
involvement of
as a
third party?
third party,
In your opening statement, have you invoked this issue?
Your Lordship, in our memorial we have mentioned, but right now in our arguments we have avoided going into that fourth point. Because in our arguments, because we definitely not do that. Nor have we ever gone into it.
Yes, Mr. Prosecution Counsel, I did not understand your contention. Could you just make the court aware?
I am making the court aware that in the memorial or in the plea present before the court, it is written that there is a very high suspicion.
That I am not talking about. I am talking about this.
I am proving to this point is that there cannot be a involvement of third party, Your Honor.
Okay, then next.
I'm sorry.
Next.
And the next thing is that if there were any of the marks present, like if there was a high probability in these cases, if anyone other than Yashika Singh was present over there, there would be a minimum.
Third party issue is gone. Anything
Was there anything unusual in the body, like in the autopsy report?
No.
There was nothing unusual.
No.
So was the autopsy report similar to any of the any other autopsy report which under which the death was caused by burning the body? Like you have a vast experience in this decade, so
I take up a lot of cases every day, so it's very difficult to.
if you take up these cases regularly, then there is a high
So what do you
chances that
think?
you can.
Medical officer, what do you think that what is the primary cause of the death?
this day.
Due to third degree burns
Due to third degree.
and the hypovolemic shock that was caused.
And I believe from the report also you all are like in a very good position to understand whether it is a accidental or a suicidal. What do you find
What is
about
the
that?
finding? Is it accidental or suicide?
What do you think from your report?
Not as a medical examiner.
Cannot be ascertained.
Cannot be
ascertained. Anything else?
And when the body was handed over for the post-mortem, was there any finger mark present or any body tag was present?
There was a identification mark on her left thumb.
So are you aware of the fact? Okay.
Identify the.
Are you aware of the fact that fingerprint is taken before when the police is handing over the body to the hospital?
Yes, maybe.
Point to be noted. Maybe or yes.
Uncertain.
Uncertain.
Point to be noted, Your Honor. Thank you, madam.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, am I allowed to cross the judgment? It's not necessary. Thank you.
Now I believe it's the closing statements, right, by prosecution. Here you can establish your claim as well as any opposition in statement form.
And conclude with your prayer. 3 points.
My lord, in the very instance of this case, it is a totally evidential point that there was a dowry given. There was dowry given because the dowry affected the agreement of the whole marriage. If there was no dowry, Rajiv Mehra would not have married Yashika Singh. And it is quite obvious in this, it is a social stigma that middle class families are targeted for the dowries. And Rajiv Mehra, being a high hold economical status, the families could...
dowry, the demand of dowry was persistent all throughout the marriage. It's not only about getting money.
I'm coming to that, my lord. And in this further case, we can also see that custody of the child was always with the in-laws. The very fact where the negotiations were done between the both families was because Yashika Singh wanted to see her child. Every mother has their emotions towards the child, and Rajiv Mehra and the families were holding the custody of the child from the very starting instant. And as stated in the chief witnesses, when they were having the child, it is clearly stated that the family was a very happy family in front of everyone. So it clearly comes to connect the dots that in front of everyone they showed no emotions of the cruelty that is being done to Yashika Singh. And Yashika Singh did not reveal that there was cruelty as to other members of the family just because of the certain fact that she would have lost the child. Because the only contention which is holding between the demand for dowry was the custody of the child. On the very certain day of the incident also, there were a heated argument and the child was in custody with the in-laws in the movie theatre, and nothing was present in the house during the incident. And then I am coming to the second point is that if Rajiv Mehra's family was so economically higher, then why did every of the in-laws in the chief witness statement have mentioned that that Yashika Singh always had a problem of she was a totally of spendthrift nature. If there were so many economically higher standards, then it would not have been a cause. And as to coming to the fact that dowry debt can be included, dowry debt is certainly established in this perceived case because the mental cruelty and the physical cruelty which was laid out. And as in the chief examination, the medical officer proclaimed that in the 6 weeks or 4 weeks, the bruise can easily be gotten. And we have to keep in mind that she was not allowed to go out of the house. And when the in-laws used to visit the house, they always asked for money. Because if you want to see the child, then give us this proclaimed amount. As stated by Balraj Singh in the very first chief witness. And coming to this... And coming to this very fact that there is no concrete evidence, it also establishes in Prabhu versus State of Uttar Pradesh that creating a reasonable doubt cannot be equated with proof by preponderance of probabilities. There are probabilities in many instances, but in this very facts of the case, it is clearly stated that there was a chain of events. And as proclaimed by the defendant that the arguments were two-sided, it will be two-sided, but it only established that there was mental trauma. An argument can be formed in any of the heated arguments. It can be two-sided, but it can also be one-sided. But it doesn't mean that if it is one-sided, it will be cruelty, and if it is two-sided, then it won't be cruelty. Cruelty is meant that there was a mental disturbance in the state of Yashika Singh. And also, in the very facts of the case, it is clearly stated that Rajiv Mehra had a very serious ailment of diabetes. So it is very much sure that Rajiv Mehra used to take any of the medicines for diabetes, and which would lead him to the cause that there will be agitation because it is a severe side effects of all the diabetics missing. Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to pray to the humble justice that they are to be held to be guilty because in the social justice or the social stigma, it clearly states out that the male of every family is always being a dominant creature or the dominant feature in the whole family. And I'd like to seek justice by provoking section 304B, 498A and 34 of the IPC. Thank you, my lord.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. In this case, the prosecutor has presented to you today, there is sufficient proof, there is insufficient proof to convict. We would ask for a verdict of not guilty. It is to be noted, Your Honor, that the prosecution has the burden of proof. In other words, they have to prove beyond doubt that we committed the crime without
knowingly we committed the crime. They simply have not done this. There is no physical evidence linking the defendant to the crime, and the entire case is just he said, she said case. This will become clear as we recount the testimonies of the witnesses and the evidence presented. Firstly, there was a suicide attempted by Yashika, but the defendants are not responsible for it. Yashika had her own reasons to take her life. We will establish this in the proceeding arguments as the fourth issue. Secondly, Your Honor, there was no cruelty in
that has not been dwelt upon by the other counsel.
Your Lordship, I did mention in my opening statement there was a third party involved, so we are
But
not sure.
you didn't throw much light on that. Yes.
Your Lordship.
Secondly, there was no cruelty inflicted by the defendants. The prosecution witness 1 has stated that the defendants physically abused her. However, there is no report. There is no sign of injury in the autopsy report. Firstly, also regarding the mental cruelty, they are the parents. They are grief-stricken and they are just wanting to find. They want to give justice to their daughter, and this is a desperate attempt to just blame the in-laws. Also, Your Honor, the relationship between the family was a little strained, but that in no way suggests or leads to the conclusion that
So that poison incident took place due to what? You are focusing on.
Yeah,
what
I
is
will come to the facts.
Just the last point you mentioned.
Yes.
That, maybe for
This
any
is a
reason
third party
known
involvement,
to.
Your Honor, so I will
So
come
that
to
for
the.
that reason she had to. Why
Yes.
did she consume poison? If she had this third party issue and all, like what is your contention? I'm not getting the correlation.
So no, I'll just come. So this is a very different story. Okay, so when the third party is involved.
That's what I said. No?
So
It has not been brought to the knowledge of the court through the arguments produced before the court. So now you are focusing primarily on that in your concluding statements, which the court is not aware of. Are you getting my point? So I just wanted you to give us some information on that. How could you say that? How could you come to that conclusion that the episode of consuming poison is maybe for a reason which is better known to Yashika? So that what you said. So what is the reason that led to that event?
Your Honor,
As for you, because you are disproving what the prosecution is trying
I
to
would like,
establish.
yes, Your Honor.
Now the onus is upon you. Now the onus is upon you.
Our contention is that Bajrang Singh knew of this affair that Yashika had with this other person, and that is it. And he knew of the. So what happened is, so I'll come to the third party involvement. So Yashika had an affair before marriage, but Bajrang Singh forced her to marry Rajiv Mehra because they were an influential family, and Bajrang Singh thought that it was the best for her daughter. Also, Your Honor, so the next thing that happens is Bajrang Singh thinks that he has successfully married Yashika. However, Yashika was still in contact with that person, and that person demanded money from Yashika, and she happily gave the money to him because she thought that later on they would.
Okay, God. Next issue. Your next point. Yes, next point. Just conclude within 1 minute. Time for 1 minute. I'm giving 1 minute. Conclude within 1 minute.
Your Honor, there was no dowry demand. Okay, and the money that was given was in the form of Sridhan, and it was given to her to open a sweet shop. Yashika never opened a sweet shop, and
Which
how?
money you are talking about? The 10
Yeah, the 10 lakhs.
That
And
is
how
a-
and where she spent the money, we never asked her because we never cared, because it didn't matter to us. So it was her money, it was given to her as a gift. So we didn't even care to ask about her that where was the money and why aren't you opening a sweet shop. Right.
So you accepted that your client has received that money?
Sorry, Your Honor?
Yashika has received that money?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you are aware about it? Your client is aware
Yes,
about
Your Honor, it was a form of Sridhan. It's as gift. Moving along, Your Honorship, Your Honor, due to the ineffective and partial investigation done by the investigating officer, there is not much evidence for us to prove the third party involvement, and we would request
the court to take cognizance of this and order for a proper investigation. Also, it is the prosecutor who has all the resources to investigate the case. It is not the job of the defendant to go and investigate the matter. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you for defense
The case presented before the court is State of West Bengal versus Rajiv Goenka, and the team 22 is the 28 is the prosecution and team 2 is the defense.
Good afternoon. Permission to address the bench as a lordship. Much obliged. May it please your lordship, shall I begin with the facts of the case?
Proceed.
The
Just
facts.
very briefly tell the facts and go to the issues.
Much obliged, your lordship. The facts of the case are that Rajiv Mehra and Shivani Singh were married on 24th April. The marriage was solemnized under Hindu Marriage Act. The father of Yashika Singh provided them with dowry in form of gold ornaments and 10 lakh rupees. Yashika did not have cordial relationship with her in-laws, and she was subjected to continuous cruelty and torture in relation with dowry. The situation became worse when she committed suicide by consuming poison. As the situation kept getting graver, one day the neighbor of the accused found her screaming and burning inside the kitchen. When he went to save her, he took her to the hospital, and the accused and the father of the victim were informed. She was declared dead at the hospital after 3 third-degree burns. Thereafter, the father of the victim filed a written complaint with the police, and the accused were charged under sections 498A, 34 and 306 of the Indian Penal Code on basis of prima facie charges. I would like the court to acknowledge the fact that we assume that we live in a modern society where we have come a long way from when women were treated as possessions and owned and commodities that men possessed, and we've shackled ourselves from shackles of patriarchy. Yet we stand here today where a woman is brutally treated with cruelty and tortured to a level where she had no choice but to take her life. In such trauma, the parents of the victim are asking for justice, and they want justice for a daughter who they lost to something so heinous. May it please your lordship, may I proceed with the arguments?
Yes, you can proceed.
Much obliged. My first argument states that the accused is not guilty for abatement of suicide under section 306 of the Indian Penal Code. This can be proved when referred to the autopsy report, where it is clearly stated the parts of the body of the accused which have been burned. 70% of the accused's body is burned except her palms and soles. The palms of the body of the accused have not been burned, which indicates that this is not an accident. Because in case it was an accident, the accused might have tried to extinguish the fire, which is not the case here. This is also provided under Exhibit B of the trial bundle, where the autopsy report is given. Further, Section 113 of the Indian Evidence Act states that the court can assume that a married woman was abated to suicide if the act is committed within 7 years of the marriage and she has been subjected to cruelty by her husband and their in-laws. The victim was demised within 4 years of her marriage. Therefore, the first precondition is met. Secondly, she was continuously faced with cruelty by her in-laws and her husband, which can be proved by the way of statements by the parents and the charge sheet that was filed. In addition to this, it can be proved by the verity that this was not the first time that the victim attempted to commit suicide. She attempted to commit suicide once before by consuming poison, but she was saved. Therefore, under Section 306 of IPC read with Section 103 of the Evidence Act, we contend that there was a clear abatement of suicide. For my second argument, I would like 113 of the Indian Evidence Act. 113A. As for the second argument, I would like to humbly pose that the accused should be found guilty of dowry demand, cruelty and domestic violence under section 498A of the IPC. Come to my lordship if you can refer to page number 13 of the trial bundle, where the facts of Rajendra Singh versus State of Punjab are described. The term soon before 13. The term soon before death is provided here, which states that time delays might vary in cases, but it is necessary that demand for dowry should be continuing cause for the death of the victim. We are aware of the fact that there was cruelty meted out on her, physical and mental, as statements of the parents of the victim and also neighbor of the victim, where it is said that daily quarrels between them led to mental trauma. If you could refer to the autopsy report once again, Your Honor, there has been we can notice escalatory incision and marks on the victim which are ante-mortem in nature. Therefore, this states that these injuries have been caused to the victim before she took her life, which is direct evidence to conclude that there has been some form of direct violence caused to her. Further, under section 34 of the Indian Penal Code, we see that for section 34 to be invoked, there has to be a pre-arranged plan with prior meeting. In this scenario, there has been a pre-arranged plan with prior meeting, where it is said that if the dowry demand is not fulfilled, the arranged plan is to met out cruelty to Yashika so that the dowry demands are fulfilled. The indispensable matter in the case is that there was a clear demand for dowry, and therefore this proves the facts relating to cruelty and domestic violence. My third argument states that the accused is found guilty of committing the crimes related to death due to demand of dowry as provided under section 304B of the Indian Penal Code. This, when read with section 113B of the Indian Evidence Act, stated with the help of the case Kamesh P versus State of Bihar, which if your lordship would kindly turn to page 14 of the trial bundle and refer, we can observe, I quote, in the case of dowry death, the presumption is that direct evidence is not necessarily required. Thus, we can also rely on oral and circumstantial evidence in the same case. Relying on oral evidence by the father of the victim, we conclude that there has been giving of dowry in form of money and ornaments, and he also paid whatever he could pay from time to time to prohibit harassment on her daughter. It is alleged that this money has been paid to the victim for her goodwill and opening a sweet shop, and she has been called terms like spendthrift who has anger management problems. The reality of this is that if the father did pay this for the goodwill of the victim, there would not be a continuous demand for dowry, and she would not face circumstances which would create a hostile environment for the victim to live in. Therefore, this brings my argument to completion. I would be introducing the witnesses and examining them, and my co-counsel would present the closing statements. Thank you.
Okay, you can proceed with the chief examination. Who do you want to call?
Mr. Bajrang Singh.
The father of the deceased.
I'd like to take a document.
Sure.
Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm sorry for your loss.
Good afternoon.
Could you state your name?
My name is Bajrang Singh. I am 68 years old.
How are you related to the victim?
This is my daughter. She got married to her husband.
Who is?
Raju Mehra.
How are you related to the accused?
Raju Mehra is my son.
Could you describe between the victim and the accused?
Raju Mehra was the husband of Xavier Law School.
Could you describe in detail how their relationship was?
Before the marriage was a good relation, and after the marriage, mental trauma. She has to face some mental trauma and physical harassment, and such subjected to cruelty.
Could you describe your daughter's state of mind when she returned to the matrimonial home, your home?
When she came to my home, she was it was like a recovery month for her. She was doing fine, was in a very good health. And
so are you aware of those incidences that ever your daughter reported to you? Like she was undergoing tremendous mental pressure or any kind of harassment, cruelty at the matrimonial home? Are you aware?
Yes, sir.
What precisely after marriage would be the first time you noticed that you were subjected to this? How many months post marriage?
So since the day I had given dowry to the in-law family.
When did you give it out?
Sir?
When did you give it out? On the date of marriage?
During the marriage.
During. So after the marriage, when the first time you noticed that you
Sir, it started since the in-laws demanded for more dowry, and then so
after 6 months, 4 months of marriage?
Sir, after 4 or 5 months.
After 4 or 5 months.
It was on 17th December 2021 that she had attempted to commit such suicide, and then I had took action about it. I had reported to the police as such, where the police has buzzed my report.
Mr. Counsel, were the charges of 303-4B there in the charge sheet? 304B?
No, Your Lordship, but they are mentioned in the issues of the case.
Okay. Now, are you, like the charges are not there, framed under this 304B, the charges are not there in the charge sheet. So would you, as a prosecution, would you like to?
There had been a mention of dowry of Lordship.
That is there, I am not asking that, I am asking about the charges. See the charge sheet. What are the charges framed under section 498A, 306 and 34 of IPC? Where the 34 of IPC? So are you now telling this court that you also want to bring 304B?
Yes, Your Lordship.
Okay, proceed. Your chief. Yes.
Was there a quarrel on the day between the victim and the accused on the day of the incident?
Yes, there was they had a fight on the day of the incident, and I came to know about through my daughter. She called me on the morning.
She was sent back to her home after negotiations. What kind of negotiations were done?
It was about having a child, and she wanted to continue her relationship with the child and her husband, and all the negotiation was came positively. So she was adult of, and now she can control of her life. Then I allowed her.
As a parent, did you do anything like when you heard about these incidences? What step did you take?
So
when you were aware that your daughter is subjected to cruelty?
So I was fully helpless, because since my daughter's marriage was for his sake, so and I was completely, I can't took any actions, because Mera families had a very high power of influence, and I I was afraid of my daughter that if I take any actions against them, that my daughter would face further circumstances of it.
Yes, Mr. Counsel.
Did you bear the expenses of your daughter's newborn?
Yes, I have all the expenses and costs of my daughter's pregnancy.
Now, could you describe the day of the demise of your daughter?
Day of my demise. I can't get the word.
The day your daughter died, the incidents that took place.
My daughter was on 14th April. My daughter was. I got notified that my daughter was severely burned, and then I got a call from Sukant Rajput saying that they were rushed towards the hospital.
You got the information from whom?
From one of the neighbors of Mera's family named Sukant Rajput.
He was the first person to inform you?
Yes, sir. Though I knew about the fight earlier, but Sukant Rajput was the one who introduced that my daughter had.
Okay, got it. Do you want any other witness for your
The council would like to call the second witness, the investigation officer. Informed you about the incident?
Ashish Gujral.
What steps did you take to investigate the incident?
I dispatched a team to the hospital when I got the news, and I went to Rajiv's house. I saw that the door was broken, and then I went towards the kitchen and saw that there was a burnt piece of cloth lying near the kitchen, and the rest in a very messed up condition.
The investigation officer.
Yeah. And there was a messed up blanket lying near the kitchen, and the rest of the house was in a very intact condition.
When did you get the autopsy report and what was mentioned in that?
I got the autopsy report the next day, which is 15th of April, around 9 in the morning. It mentioned that the victim died due to hypovolemic shock, which is caused because of 30
Could you describe what
you were the investigating officer. How could you were well aware about the terms?
It was written in the autopsy report.
So you were telling the report of what the medical officer said. So is the question what the defense asked?
I asked when did you get the autopsy report and what was mentioned in it?
I can't say technical terms, but I can say what was the written report.
Yes, next. Wrap up.
Thank you, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Now cross by the defense. Yes, whom you want to call?
Your Honor, I want to call Bajrang Singh. Your Honor, with your due permission, may I begin with the process?
Yes, proceed.
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Bajrang Singh, and I'm 68 years old.
Yes, you come to the main contentions.
Why did you give the money in the cash and not in the form of bank transfer or gift deeds, so that you could have the proof of it, so that you could show it to the court later?
It was done hand to hand during the marriage. So, yeah, we can say that during the marriage it was like a celebration kind of thing. It was done in physical way.
Okay. Have you seen Yashika being tortured with your own eyes?
I could feel her through her voice. She used to call me during some month, twice a month, that because I have known Jessica for years, and due to such, once I came to know about through her voice that she has been faced a lot from her laws, and then once my wife told me about it as such, because my wife was close to my daughter, not like in a regular basis, but due to a weekly advice. So yeah, I had came to know about it since.
So according to you, your wife was more close to her and not you?
No. It's not about thing, but during my I had some due to my office hours, so I am busy with that. So yeah, obviously my wife was free during hours. So as such, so Jessica used to call my wife and.
So according to the telephonic conversations you had, you just assumed through her voice and not by her words that she was being tortured?
No. Not by, obviously her voices and her words that she used to describe us about it. And then I was so helplessly, and no, I can't do anything about it.
You know that giving dowry is also crime. So, according to you, if the money was dowry and not a stridhan, then why did you give it?
Since I belong to a middle class family, and Rajiv Mehra was coming from a high influence family, and for him not giving a dowry or as such was like a bad impression for us, for people like middle class family, to all the societies, that if I don't give dowry to as such to the family, then it would come to under a bad impression towards everyone, and my daughter would face her.
So why the term dowry is being used? You can also gift your daughter as in a gift to your daughter on marriage,
so
out of love and affection. Why not?
So I have tried that, but the family had demanded for dowry, and
so there was a demand.
There was a demand, sir.
Right before the marriage?
Not before the marriage. So during it was not.
You said no during the chief.
Yeah.
That dowry was demanded during marriage, and you gave during marriage.
Yes, sir.
So it was when the demand was made.
It was around early morning of the.
No, I'm talking about when before the marriage, obviously.
Yes, sir. Before the marriage.
So please make the court aware, because your statements are becoming inconsistent. In the chief, you said that you paid the dowry during marriage. Now you are saying that there was no demand before marriage.
No, sir. I have paid a dowry during the marriage, but there was a demand before the marriage, on the day of marriage. On the day of marriage, it was demanded.
Okay. Yes, proceed.
Just now you said that it was given as a means of celebration, so you didn't even keep a record or didn't even find it necessary to do a bank transfer or a gift transfer. Then why are you now saying that you are belonging from a middle class family and paying 10 lakh rupees is a huge amount for you? You are contradicting yourself, right?
Actually, keeping a record was at that point of time was a celebration, obviously. So I couldn't record each and everything as I was busy on my daughter's marriage. So I thought like they would not demand for more. But after a month, my daughter had told me that she was facing some more amount of from their side of demands. So I couldn't keep the record of
No, sir, it's not about keeping record. It's just like here, the way you are transferring the money. Either it's through bank transfer or...
Any other issue, counsel? The next issue? Please move on to the next one.
Today you have taken the action by filing the case against the in-laws after your daughter is dead. When your daughter had consumed poison earlier and was in the verge of death, why didn't you find it necessary to file a case?
During that time, I had filed a complaint to the nearest police department. But
when did you file a complaint?
During
after that, daughter consumed poison.
After the yes sir. After my daughter had consumed poison.
What happened to that?
After 17 December.
After no sir. Just before my daughter, I heard about my daughter's committing a suicide.
Consumption of poison is on 17 December, right? Consumption of
Consumption, yes sir.
17 December. When did you file the complaint?
So on that day, after getting notified about my daughter's consumption.
Okay, yes.
In your written complaint, you have mentioned that your daughter don't want to live in her matrimonials. Now you have said just in the chief examination that your daughter wanted to continue with the relationship with his husband. Then why are you contradicting yourself? Can you please explain?
Because during that point of time, my daughter had a child named Ajay Mehra, and we had a decision about her child, that her child wanted to live, wanted to know about her father, wanted to continue the relationship between the father and the mother. And knowing such, I allowed my daughter to go and live with on her matrimonial home.
Okay. Last question. According to your wife, you have paid all the expenses born while the child being born. Then where are the medical bills and the other hospital expenses?
No such has been recorded by me, but all I can say is,
what do you want to establish, counsel? Just say that to the court. Do you want to cross any other witness?
No. Yes, I want to cross the IO.
IO, okay, call him. Yes, the investigation officer should be called.
Where are the seizure list and the inquest report of the case?
I do have filed them. I don't know if they are not.
Okay, so you
Yes,
found
you asked for the inquest report.
seizure list and the inquest report.
Yes. IO. Be loud.
Yeah, I do have filed them, but I don't know why it is not there.
So you found the blanket lying in the ground, burning blanket. Then why didn't you seize it? Don't you find it important for the case?
That was a very messed up blanket.
So don't you find it necessary to preserve it for the case?
It was not in a condition.
Why, Mr. Counsel, why you are asking for this inquest report? What is the relevancy?
Inquest report, Your Honor, inquest report states the procedure through which he has investigated in the case.
Is it? Yes.
Any more question?
Last question I'll allow. 1 minute.
You got the news around 4:30 p.m. when you sent your team to the hospital. But after conducting the investigation, why didn't you personally visit the hospital for the investigation?
I went to the house, like I said, and it took time there. Because nobody was in the house.
Was there any, you were the IO of the nearest police station, right? Within the jurisdiction. So, where did he, after this consuming of the poison episode, were there any complaints from the father's side?
There was a complaint in the father's side. And according to...
What happened to, what steps or what action did you take?
At that time, I was not the IO of this place, so I have launched investigation while that case was not followed.
What the records are saying? What are the records? When he came here and joined. So what steps have you taken? Did you take any step or no action has been taken?
I have launched investigation regarding why it was not followed up.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now the opening statement by the defense. Yes, you may proceed, counsel.
The Council's permission to address the entire bench as Your Honor.
Yes.
Much obliged. Good afternoon, Your Honor. I am the Defense Counsel, Speaker 1. If the court is well versed with the issues and facts of the case, I'd like to move forward with my arguments at once.
Yes.
Much obliged. Your Honor, as per the first contention, which says whether Rajiv Mehra and Shivani Mehra will be held liable for Yashika Singh's developmental suicide. Your Honor, this is a very serious charge which is made out against the accused. Firstly, the essentials of 306 are not even met here. Neither there was any instigation nor there was any provocation from the accused side which can establish this charge. The prosecution did not have any cogent or material evidence to prove that they instigated the suicide.
Mr. Counsel, should we not consider the circumstances which led to the event? Should we consider those circumstances as a piece of evidence to establish their claim? You were saying there is no cogent evidence, so I am just asking you whether we should consider those circumstances which are actually leading to the event, leading to the mishap.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, proceed.
Your Honor, the accused family holds a very good reputation in the society, and it has to be kept in mind that Yashika is the daughter-in-law of the family, wife of their son Rajiv, and is the mother of Rajiv Mehra's only son. Therefore, the thought of harming Yashika did not even cross the mind of the accused, let alone harming her. Most importantly, there is one more point which I would like to highlight, is that there is one more daughter in their family, Sushila Mehra, who receives the same treatment as Yashika does, and this, Your Honor, itself is a res ipsa loquitur, which means action speaks for itself. The treatment over Sushila Mehra is also an evidence the way Yashika was treated in the family. Your Honor, even if there was verbal fights, this cannot mean an instigation to suicide. The regular wear and tear of ordinary life, mere strenuous relationships with the family members, cannot lead towards instigation.
How do you substantiate that event of consuming poison then? What led to that event? Was it a...
Your Honor, Yashika was very adamant. She was very moody. She used to get angry very easily.
She was adamant and angry, so he drank poison.
No, Your Honor.
What is the how do you substantiate?
Your Honor,
as you were saying that these events are not leading to any kind of cruelty.
Your Honor, Yashika herself was very problematic as she could not blend with the family after her marriage, neither with the family members, and she had regularly verbal fights with every member of the family.
Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe this can. I am not.
Yes.
All of her denying the fact, but I am saying that if these all were happening, there was an event, no, 16 September, no, 17 December 2021.
Yes, Your Honor.
That Yashika consumed poison.
Your Honor, this incident may have taken place due to her act of rage, because whenever she used to get angry or whenever she used to have a fit of her rage,
not reasonable or prudent person out of rage or anxiety or arrogancy or adamancy will consume poison.
Your Honor,
that's why I am asking you to substantiate.
Yes, Your Honor, she used to have insanity attacks. She had regular insanity attacks.
Is there any proof of any documentary proof or anything which you can say that yes?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness statement of Sushila Mehra makes a bit.
So will you call in your chief?
No, Your Honor. She is not in the witness. But she has mentioned in her witness statement that Yashika has insanity attacks.
Okay, you continue with your issues, arguments.
Your Honor, I'd like to refer to a case called Sanjay Singh Sengar versus State of MP, which is mentioned in page number 13 of the memo, where the Supreme Court has stated that instigation denotes incitement or urging to do some drastic action which requires the presence of men's fear. Thus, Your Honor, there was no taunting or aggressive behavior by the accused towards the deceased. Also, the act of consuming poison, as Your Honor has questioned, was an act of extreme rage by her, as she always had a tendency to commit suicide, and as I also say that she had insanity attacks at times. Thus, Your Honor, the abatement charges are taken as unnecessary and it is groundless to take up this issue, and thus the accused is not guilty in this point. Moving on to contention number 2, whether Rajiv and his family will be held liable for domestic violence, cruelty and dowry demands. Your Honor, first of all, there was no dowry demands ever made by the accused during or after the marriage. Neither there is any cogent or material evidence that dowry was ever exchanged, which the prosecution can produce to prove. Because there was no dowry made out, no exchange, and automatically there can be no punishment charges of Dowry Prohibition Act applicable over the accused. But the defense counsel adapted this fact that Bajrang Singh had given 10 lakhs rupees to Yashika, which was solely her stridhan, and the in-laws had nothing to do with it. This whole transaction was made due to Yashika's interest to open a sweet shop. And when this transaction was made, it was made completely between the father and the daughter. The in-laws were nowhere and anywhere close to them.
Where this sweet shop was intended to open? Where?
Your Honor, is mentioned in the facts.
Where this sweet shop was intended to open?
So, it's not mentioned.
Not mentioned?
No.
So your client is aware that Yashika has received 10 lakhs?
Yes.
And what about the old ornaments?
Yes. Yes.
The ornaments are also meant
yes.
for opening sweet shop?
No. So it's not mentioned. Your Honor, it's not mentioned.
So, opening a sweet shop, doing this, whether this Yashika had any experience of opening sweet shop?
We don't know that, sir. May I proceed?
Yes.
Therefore, Your Honor, whatever Bajrang Singh had given, it was completely the stridhan of Yashika and not dowry. And just to reiterate this fact, Your Honor may refer to the case law mentioned in page number 23 of the memorial, named Hakam Singh versus State of Punjab, which says that stridhan cannot mean dowry in any case because this is a confined property of the bride and not of anyone else.
Counsel, when you were accepting that your client has received this whatever called stridhan, then why your previous counsel that spent so much time on asking parents that how they transfer this fund? When you know that they have received this 10 lakh as stridhan, then why you are wasting time on saying that what is the mode of transfer and which regulator the client or all these things? Are you not contradicting your co-counsel?
Sir, I am just doing this to show that they don't have any proof of this transaction. The in-laws have no proof of this transaction.
Already have accepted that it is stridhan or it is received?
Sir, it was stridhan.
It is received, right? It is received.
It was not received by the in-laws, sir. It was received by Yashika. I told that only, that it was received with the father and the daughter. The in-laws had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Okay, you just proceed.
Your Honor, with the condition number 3 of essentials of section 304B, Your Honor, the essentials of section 304B are not met here. Prosecutions have failed to prove them beyond any reasonable doubt. Initial burden is over the prosecution to prove anything beyond reasonable doubt, but they have failed it here, and the onus does not shift towards the defense. But prosecution has only brought groundless allegations without any cogent evidence. The presumption of section 113B and section 304B has not provided. And moreover, Your Honor, there was fallacies in the investigation by the police, where the investigating authority is accountable to answer numerous questions like whether the seizure list was made, whether the inquest report was made. Police also could not answer whether the death was an accident or how it is caused. Unless the investigation is complete, which points the fact that the accused is guilty, there is not even a slight possibility of innocence of the accused, still that it is just unjust to hold them liable.
Okay, you just cross. Chief. Just call your witnesses. Whom you want to call?
Your Honor, I want to call Sukant Rajput. Please state state your name and address for the record.
I am Mr. Sukant Rajput and I reside at 121 Southern Park, Kolkata 700001.
How are you exactly related with the case?
I am Mr. Rajiv Mehra's neighbor.
How exactly did you came to know about the incident?
So on that ill-fated day, I suddenly heard a loud cry and I rushed to see what had happened actually. After that, I saw Mr. Ashish Gujral trying to break open the door and Yashika was burning in her kitchen. So I immediately tried to rescue her and take her to the hospital, to which she succumbed to her injuries. But before that, I had informed Mr. Rajiv Mehra and Yashika's father, Mr. Bajram Singh, about the incident.
How cordial was the relationship of the Mehras with the neighbors?
The Mehras were very outgoing, I must say, because they had good relationship with almost everyone.
How was the relationship with the couple, Rajiv and Yashika?
Regarding the couple as well as like Yashika's relation with the in-laws, yes, there were verbal fights, but it was nothing like close to domestic violence because I never heard any kind of scream out of pain. So it was only just verbal fights that I used to do. That's it. There was nothing related to physical torture or domestic violence, or there was no scream of pain from pain.
And are you aware of the incident that happened when Yashika consumed poison?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
How do you get to know?
She's my neighbor, so I got to know about that, and it was mostly because of postpartum depression.
Yes.
Were you aware of any problem going on between the family members?
I'm not exactly sure what was the problem, but yes, I did hear verbal fights. But as I told my lordship that it was nothing close to physical torture and I never heard any scream out of pain.
As you mentioned that you heard the verbal fights, did you ever hear any particular contents of verbal fights going on between the Mehras?
So they are my neighbors and it's wrong of me to intrude in the internal matters, but yes, sometimes it used to come to my ears that like Yashika was spending too much and they were fighting over it. So something like that.
How was Yashika's relationship with the in-laws?
As I said that there was continuous tension and verbal fights with the in-laws, and but yeah, it was nothing close to physical torture, and that's it.
And how was Yashika's relation with the neighbors?
Yashika never mingled with me or any other neighbors, so we can't say much about it.
Nona, this is all about my first petition.
Was she insane?
I don't think so. I don't know her really well because she hardly mingled with any of us, so I can't say.
Okay.
Now I'd like to call my second witness, the medical practitioner.
Yes, the medical officer.
Please state your name and occupation for the record.
Your Honor, my name is Dr. Murli Prasad Sharma and I had performed the autopsy report of Yashika Singh.
How can you explain the magnitude of burn on the body of the deceased?
As per my researches, Your Honor, kindly request me to refer to the autopsy report. It is a death due to third-degree burns, Your Honor.
Do you think the death was only for burning?
Yes, I think the death is only due to burning upon my findings. Requesting to refer to the autopsy report and the second page, which states that the skull, the cranium was intact, which means it can be referred that there was no external effect of an object to the skull of the victim. The abdominal walls were also intact, Your Honor.
Could you find anything like which substantiates that this mishap was an accidental or a suicidal? Was it suicidal or accidental? Will you substantiate with this report? Did you find anything like out of your own
Burning is fine. Burning is fine. Yes, fire is suicidal or accidental?
Your Honor, that is, I could not get it during my research, Your Honor, but I think it might be accidental, might be due to the burst of the cylinder or due to the accident of the stove, from the gas stove, something due to that. A fire
Sure that it's accidental.
Yes, Your Honor.
How can you sure that it is accidental? People are doing it.
Your Honor,
that's the only burn the body which is safe is burning.
Yes, Your Honor.
But how is it? Means what is the source of this fire?
Your Honor, this
So you find anything in
Any
the report?
Any substantial Can we ascertain that?
No, Your Honor, I cannot.
Okay.
What does it mean by hypovolemic shock that is attributed as a reason behind the death of the deceased?
Hypovolemic shock is a state, Your Honor, when a body reaches where the heart stops pumping the blood due to the loss of fluid and blood, Your Honor.
Okay. Next, yes.
What is an escalatory incision?
Escalatory incision is the incision that is generally made by a knife that can be done during a part of surgery. That might be a wound that be present.
Could you repeat just what did you say?
Escalatory incision is an incision that can be made on the body with a knife, which can be present by during performing of a surgery. Might have been occurred in the part of.
Or maybe any injury.
Maybe any kind of injury might have occurred.
Okay. So there is, you find in your report that there is a evidence of injury in the body, right?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor. It's in the autopsy report that there is a mechanical injury of escalatory incision.
Is it only, how could you, is it has to be with a knife? It can be. How can you say it's a mechanical injury? It can be any physical bruise also. Can't it be?
That can be a physical bruise, Your Honor, but when I received the body, the incision was almost mechanical. It's sort of a mechanical incision, Your Honor.
Okay, proceed.
Does the incision militarily shows a sign of violence on the deceased?
Maybe not, Your Honor. As per my reports, I did not feel anything suspicious about the incisions. They might be accidents. It does not show any domestic violence. As per my research, Your Honor.
What was the agent of burning and as how the deceased caught fire? Could it be identified?
That identification is still a question mark, Your Honor. It might be due to some accidents, due to a cylinder burst or accident due to fire, stove catching.
But you can tell the court that the incision marks are by a mechanical, it cannot be a physical injury. That you are certain of, but you are not certain of the fact that whether it is accidental or suicidal.
Your Honor, when I received the body, it was already burned, and I did not visit the crime scenes. I don't know what is the source of the burning, how it happened. I just know that the body had burned. I did not know how it.
Where the body was burned, would that give any clue, or would that give anything to substantiate in your report?
Your Honor, the question report referred to the autopsy report. It was stated the upper face of body muscles and the chest were burned, which means there might be that Yashika would have been unmindful and she had switched on the stove, and while lighting up the stove, the gust of fire could have catch her. That might be one of the reasons.
So when we usually use a gas oven, so usually we stand and we cook, no?
Yes.
How can the fire catch up in the upper part of the body, the face, upper limbs? Why not the abdomen or the stomach? Because it is going straight away, no? The fire. That's why I'm asking, could you find anything, any clue which the court can come to the conclusion?
I could not find anything.
Okay. Yes, anything else?
What is your conclusion from the report, Doctor?
My conclusion is it was a death due to hypovolemic shock. It is 30 degree points.
Okay, thank you.
That's all.
Yes, now crossed by the prosecution. I didn't get you. Oh, you want to distribute the time? Okay. So timekeeper, can that be done? 4 minutes each. Is only you want to call or you want to?
Good afternoon, Doctor. I would like to call the neighbor Sukant Rajput.
You want to cross Sukant Rajput? Call Sukant Rajput. Yes, you can proceed, counsel.
So, Mr. Sukant, can you tell us from how long have you been the neighbor of Rajiv?
I don't exactly remember the number of years, but yes, I have been their neighbor for many years.
So, can you tell us what kind of bond did you share with Rajiv?
Can you please repeat the question?
What kind of bond? Or
We are neighbors. We just know each other for a long time, and that's it.
so, when you entered the crime scene, accident spot, according to your statement, what did you saw? What did you see?
So when I entered, first I saw Mr. Ashish Gujral trying to break open the door, and I also saw Yashika burning inside her kitchen. So without any second thought, I rushed in, and after Mr. Gujral had broken the door and he had covered her with a blanket, we took her to the hospital.
Was Yashika running or screaming or trying to stop the fire?
She was screaming, that I remember, but I don't remember whether she was running or like trying to stop the fire, because at that point of time my only instinct was to save Yashika somehow, so I didn't notice what the other gestures. But yes, she was screaming, due to which I went to save her.
Okay. Can you tell us how regular the fights were?
Every now and then I must say.
So as a neighbor, you didn't think it necessary to talk to them, like they were having regular fights. So you didn't try to talk to them or console them about what's happening in their house?
Regarding consoling, so as I said, that I never heard in detail. Like I just, very rarely, I just used to hear that maybe Yashika was spending a lot and that. But apart from that, I never heard. So I was not in a position to console since I didn't know what the fight was all about. That is the first thing. And I actually didn't know what is it. And why should I interfere in somebody else's family matters? That's the first thing.
You mentioned in your statement that Yashika was suffering from a mental trauma. What kind
I didn't mention mental trauma, I said postpartum depression.
In your statement of witness, it has been stated that.
Yeah, that is a kind of mental trauma.
So you are contradicting your words.
Postpartum depression falls under mental trauma.
How could you use this term? You are just a neighbor. You just see your neighbor having regular verbal fights or maybe seldom fights, and how can you use an intense expression or two words? You have used mental trauma in your statement under 161. So how do you justify that? How do you know that there is a mental trauma? There is a very exhaustive term which is generally used by some expert person. You are a neighbor. How do you, like, all of a sudden, in your statement under 161 before the magistrate, you are saying that yes, Yashika was under mental trauma?
So the lordship, because she committed suicide, and like according to my layman's knowledge, I know that people commit suicide only when they go through severe mental trauma.
So it can be also, if that is your level of certainty of understanding mental trauma, then I can also say that there has been a series of circumstances leading to the cruelty and harassment of the woman, leading to the mental trauma. Why not?
Yes, sir. Yes, certainly.
That can be a scope also. So
Certainly.
will you deny that?
There can be a scope certainly, but your lordship, whatever I am saying is based on what I have seen and heard, and
Okay.
internally I can't say anything else.
Okay. Yes, counsel, you can proceed.
So you are claiming that you had seen them. Had you seen them fighting with your own legs?
I just heard them.
So,
And seen and heard means what is it?
my lordship, it can.
The next witness.
One more question. So, you mentioned that you did not see them fighting. Then how can you say that it was nothing close to a physical fight? That you mentioned it just now.
Because I never heard any scream out of pain. That is why, based on that I said.
The screaming out of pain doesn't only connote inflicting physical injury or any sort of cruelty. Cruelty can be, if the 498A is invoked here by the prosecution, then cruelty can be anything. You cannot only, it's not the only criteria that you have to hear someone screaming in pain to substantiate there is cruelty or harassment. Cruelty can be a mental thing also, which over a prolonged period of time can happen. It's not that you heard them one day, one fine morning you heard Yashika and Rajiv, they were fighting, and you cannot come to a conclusion.
Sure, the lordship, I agree with what you have said, but since I never heard them screaming out of pain, I assumed that it was just verbal fights, and nothing serious or nothing close to domestic violence.
Okay.
One last question.
No, your next, I think the time is up.
I
As you said,
I was just,
okay, just.
So, how do you differentiate screams? Verbal fight screaming and physical fight screaming. You mentioned it just now that
She never screamed too loudly for us to go, like, how do you explain this? Then, from then, apparently, whatever I felt, I did. But it was never like somebody screaming out of pain and calling for help.
Yes, the next witness?
Murli
The doctor, okay. The medical officer.
So, Mr. Murli Prasad, can you tell us what do you mean by antemortem injuries?
Antemortem injuries are injuries that occur before the death.
You mentioned about the escalatory incision marks on your body. So, can you tell us how old they were, the incision marks?
Incision marks were old. They were pretty old. It had a quite long duration, maybe approximately 1 year.
But you told just before in your cheek that incision marks could be done like during the time of the surgery, and when she was born, maybe she could have been ready for the surgery. Like
She might have had a surgery before the incident of burning. There's no record of whether she had a surgery or not.
Okay, so my next question: do you remember the spots which were burned? Like where were the body marks on the body? Do you remember?
After removing the bandages, I found the burn on the upper face, the chest, upper limbs were more burned than down on the limbs.
And what about her palms and soles?
The palms and soles were comparatively less burned, but yeah, it was burned. They had burn marks.
And also, it has been mentioned in the autopsy report that there were no burn marks on the palms and soles. Okay, my last question. In a situation, if a person catches fire by accident, as you mentioned, it may be an accident. How do they try to save themselves?
You're generally unable to save yourself when you yourself catch fire on yourself. So, as per the report, you can see Yashika was screaming because she was in pain.
You can say that it wasn't suicide. It was a suicide.
It might be an accident or it might be a suicide. I don't know.
If it was accident, the victim might have tried to stop the fire with her hands or with her palms or soles.
But you just now said that there was no burn marks on the palms and the soles.
So that's what I'm saying.
So if
you are claiming that it was, if he is claiming that it was an accident,
I'm not claiming it.
It is okay.
Okay.
Okay,
no, maintain the decorum. Okay. Thank you. Now the closing statements. Here, whatever oppositions you had, you can mention that in form of statements.
So first of all, my lordship, about the incision report. About the inception report that they mentioned, the police inquest form. Sorry, it was an inquest form that they were mentioning that the police had not charged or lodged it. It has been mentioned in the Exhibit D autopsy report that the police inquest form was submitted to the hospital, and based on that, they had given their opinion of that.
Okay, next.
In the opinion of prosecution counsel, the defense witness testimony is irrelevant and not credible, and the defense counsel are just putting allegations based on their own assumption on the biasness of the investigating officer, which has no nexus. Not only they tried to torture Yashika, but now they are humiliating their character again and again by putting more allegations on her character to win the case. My Lordship, if you kindly turn to their trial burden of the defense to page 27 of your the defense burden.
Page
27, section 4.2, fourth line. They are mentioning here that deceased had a long time affair with a man before the marriage. Even after the marriage, she would go out to meet him. There is no such proof of this statement, and it is just mere allegation. And they are
the defense has not threw any light on this issue. Yes, Mr. Counsel, you can proceed.
Okay. The incision marks on her body, and as stated by the victim fathers that there was a quarrel and fight on the day when she met with an accident between the Yashika and Rajiv. It can be determined that she met with domestic violence and cruelty on the day when she died. Considering all the facts stated above as to how every step Yashika went through, even after abiding by the laws of Hindu Marriage Act, and was still accused and blamed for the reason that never would have occurred to her, and if she would not have faced such manipulation and harassment from a matrimonial house setup.
What do you want from this court?
I plead your Lordship to convict the accused and her family under the charges 498A through ID, Section 34, common intention, and Section 306, abatement of suicide, to bring justice to the victim whose dreams of having a beautiful married life were crippled by the hands of the in-laws.
That's all. Anything else, Counsel? Yes? Okay. Now the closing statement for the defense.
With your Honor's due permission, I want to place my closing statements. The prosecution has argued that the abuse meted out to Yashika encompassed the act of instigation which directly led to the committing of a suicide. However, none of the neighbors have witnessed an incidence of violence against Yashika. There has been no cogent or material evidence to prove the contention in the court of law. Coming to the presence of escalated incisions in the body of the deceased, it does not indicate directly that those injuries come from the act of violence by the in-laws, and it is a mere speculation, Your Honor. Moreover, no one other than Bajrang Singh and his wife are stating about the giving of dowry and cruelty being meted out to the deceased in relation to the dowry. They had held grudges and hold grudges and strong views against the in-laws, as the deceased had strenuous relationship with them, and they had brought about this case in the feed of revenge. The important ingredient under section 304B is that the married woman has to be harassed by the in-laws soon before death in relation to dowry. The defense contends here that although there was a mere verbal fight and disagreements, quarrels, it cannot be counted as harassment, and especially the contents of that fight in the morning in the deceased has died.
But the prosecution has not demanded for 304B, did you? So 98, 34 and 306. In the charge sheet it was not there. Would you want to, if you want to, again you have to come before this court and with your request of adding extra charge.
They had included the charge.
Yes, you carry.
The fight in the morning, the deceased died, had nothing to do with the dowry. But about Yashika's adamant nature and her spendthrift actions and the mere disregard to take care of her baby and adjust with the family members. Even on the day of the incident, the deceased was offered to come to the movies along with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law, which shows that they had no hard feelings against the deceased. And Your Honor, they always wanted to take her and wanted her to join them. Lastly, the accused are themselves heartbroken and have lost his wife and their daughter-in-law respectively. The little infant has lost his mother. It is humbly submitted that the accused have already incurred an irreparable loss, and this trial is further added to.
Anything else?
The statement of Bajrang Singh has become totally inconsistent, as in the written complaint he has said something else, and in his witness examination he has said something else.
Which one? Which inconsistency he found?
May I refer to a document?
Yes. Make it fast. Counsel.
In the written complaint, Bajrang Singh mentioned that he wanted to, Yashika wanted to come out of her matrimonial home, but here in the statement of the witness, he said that Yashika wanted to continue the relationship with her husband.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings, honorable judges. It is a matter of great pride and honor to plead in front of this honorable bench. The court here is for the state of West Bengal versus Rajiv Mehra. The counsel seeks permission to address the honorable bench collectively as lordships. Much obliged, your lordship. Your lordships, I am the prosecution counsel present before this honorable court in the case of State of West Bengal versus Rajiv Mehra. Together with me, I have my co-counsel, prosecution speaker 2. Your lordship, today I will be dealing with the opening statement as well as the chief examination, and my co-counsel, prosecution speaker 2, will be dealing with the cross-examination and will deliver the closing statement. The counsel humbly submits that this honorable court has the jurisdiction to try the matter under section 177 as it forms the local jurisdiction of this honorable court, read with section 209 of CRPC, as the case is exclusively triable by this session court. Your lordship, the counsel confers power from section 226 of CRPC to present the opening statement of the present case. The case before this honorable court presents a tragic scenario which became the reality of many Indian households. Mrs. Yashika Singh, wife of Mr. Rajiv Mehra, the prosecution today not only demands justice from this honorable court for Mrs. Yashika Singh, but seeks justice for all those families whose lives have been destroyed by such inhuman behavior. Mr. Rajiv Mehra and Mrs. Shivani Mehra was charged under section 498A 306 and Section 34 of IPC. Your Lordship, I will now take you to the facts of the case.
No need of dwelling on the facts. Go to the issues and your arguments directly.
Okay. So, basically, the Rajiv Mehra and Yashika Singh got married on 24th of April 2018. But after the marriage, Yashika was under severe torture by her in-laws and because of constant pressure of dowry. Yashika tried very well to adjust in her in-laws, but that didn't happen. She was under constant pressure for dowry, although her father, Mr. Bajrang Singh, gave 10 lakh rupees as well as a good amount of jewelry as a dowry during their marriage.
What are the issues? Come to the issues. Like I said, no need of dwelling on the facts again. So come to the issues. Issues means what are the issues you have framed and what are your arguments against it. So come there.
Yeah, so first of all, the main issue was that of dowry. That is, they acquitted Yashika for suicide. She committed suicide because of constant pressure from her in-laws. And there was abandonment from the whole family. And next is the death happened due to dowry death. And from the points, that is, there was burn marks on her body. And there was, just before her death, there was a situation created in her family, that of constant pressure. And all these facts prove that there was a constant pressure from her family, and all these things happened due to for the demand for dowry. And 498A and Section 498A, 34 and 306. These are the main sections that were presented against Rajiv Mehra.
Yes, then.
And the main thing is
So
that
you want to invoke 304B as well. Because the charges in the charge sheet, if you see, there is no 304B.
no 498A, 306 and 34 the sections.
So you don't want to invoke 304B. So in your memory you have mentioned, no?
Yeah, I want to know.
Yes, go on. Proceed. Proceed.
Yeah, then there was also a situation when Yashika was attempted suicide previously by consuming poison. But as Rajiv's family had a very good reputation, the whole thing changed, and it was brought like she wanted to consume something else, and by mistake she consumed poison. So these are all the
consumed poison by mistake.
Yeah, by mistake. That was held by police. Not that didn't happen. The actual thing was she consumed poison for attempting suicide. But since Rajiv's family had a very good reputation, so it was something that was created that she consumed it by mistake. And these are the things that I want to present before the Honorable Court, and my request and my prayer to the court is to provide justice to Mr. Bajrang Singh, the father of the deceased, Yashika Singh, and to provide justice to the family.
Okay, so you want to call the witnesses now?
Yeah, I can.
For chief examination, yes. Whom you want to call?
First of all, I want to call investigating officer Akash Anand.
IO. Yes, IO may be called.
Okay, so what is your name?
I'm Akash Anand, investigation officer.
Okay, how are you related to the
case. On 14th April, I got call from Ashish Gujral, one of Yashika's neighbor. He told me about the incident.
Okay, what happened on that day? Can you
When I went to the crime scene, I found a burnt blanket that is half torn, and the whole house was intact, but the kitchen was in best of situation.
Okay, so and how was the entire situation? How was Rajiv and how was they present over there? And
no one was present at the house.
Okay, so everything was like burnt, and was there anything other thing that you noticed? I mean, in the house?
No, there was nothing specific.
Okay, the main door. What about the main door?
It was broken.
Okay, it was broken. So, anything more that you want to mention?
No.
Okay. Thank you. And
okay, Mr. Ayo.
Yes, sir.
So you talked about the incident which happened on this April, 14th April 2022. So were we aware about any report given by any complaint filed by the father of the deceased before this incident? Any complaint was there?
Yes, it was the crime happened on 17th of December 2021 about the poison consumption by Yashika. I was in charge.
What was the complaint? What was the complaint by the father?
That she consumed poison.
Out of what? Like what were the circumstances which led to the consumption?
I would not like to answer.
Now,
it was
because
told
after
it was mistaken. I was told it was mistaken.
Did you find anything which is unnatural or something which is untoward? Did you notice anything like that after the complaint or after getting the complaint from the father?
No, sir.
Did you investigate or did you do anything? Any action has
Yes,
been
I
taken?
did the investigation.
So what action you do? What did you do?
We got a clean sheet and the complaint was withdrawn.
The complaint was withdrawn by the deceased family.
Yes, it was the confusion about the poison. Yashika basically consumed poison, confused with something else. Yeah, yes, yes.
So you are sure it was withdrawn by the deceased family?
Yes, sir.
The complaint is withdrawn.
Yes.
Okay.
can I call the next witness?
Yes, you should.
My next witness is Bajrang Singh, the father of the deceased.
So you are calling who now?
Bajrang Singh, the father of the deceased. Okay, so what is your name?
I am Bajrang Singh, father of Yashika Singh.
Okay, how is your relation with your daughter?
I had a good relation with my daughter. She was a good girl and she had been married to Rajiv Naira.
Okay, so you gave the marriage on your own. That was arranged marriage, right? Okay, and so what was how was the situation when the marriage actually happened?
The things were good, the situations were good. That's why I gave my daughter to their hand.
Okay, so
you find the family good.
Yes, first it was good.
So they did demanded dowry.
Yes, they demanded.
So still you find the family good? They are asking for 10 lakh dowry. Still you find this family good?
You were saying that you found a good family for your daughter, and that's why you decided
I
to.
didn't consider that the dowry thing in that
No,
much.
because the
sense.
prosecution counsel is trying to establish that she would like to invoke section 304B as well, because there was a demand for dowry, right, Mr. Counsel?
There is a demand for dowry.
There was any demand, or you
Yeah,
did order?
there was demand, but I didn't consider it that much important than my daughter's happiness. And
How
that's
much did they want?
10 lakhs and some gold.
So you gave.
Yeah.
When?
during the marriage.
Yes, continue.
Okay, so and after marriage, what happened actually? And what was the situation?
Yushka used to complain that she was tortured and mentally, physically. Umadevi also told me that she cried in the call for these tortures.
So after the marriage, soon after the marriage, there were incidences of this subjugation of this your daughter, right? Cruelty, torture, harassment. So you were aware about this.
Yeah, I knew, but in the societal pressure and thinking of her respect, I didn't complain that time.
You didn't complain after that incident of when your daughter consumed poison?
Yeah, that time the investigation was done by the police and they say that by
Now, you did a complaint, right? Before the police after your daughter consumed poison?
Yeah, but the case was dismissed because she by mistakenly had the poison.
So you withdrawn the case? You withdrew the case or what happened? Or the investigation was over and or you withdraw the
The
case?
investigation was over.
You didn't withdraw the case?
What was your complaint and why did you withdraw?
Did you withdraw that case since you came out with you came to a conclusion that there was nothing, it was a mistake? So let it be like I am withdrawing my case. Was it so? Because that's what the prosecution.
Actually, the investigation was over and it did not come anything because the office.
But your witness is not sure about it, whether she withdrew it or because the IO just now said that there was a withdrawal of the complaint by Bajrang Singh.
Yeah, the investigation was over and she withdrew. The Bajrang Singh withdrew.
Okay. Anything else you want to ask?
Yeah. What happened after? What happened on the day of the main accident?
I got a call from Sultan Rajput that Yoshika Singh was got burnt in the kitchen, and she was rushed to the hospital, and I went there to accompany her and to see the rest.
Counselor, is it accident? Is it accident?
Actually, the first incident was she consumed poison, but the second incident was.
Is it accident or suicide?
Okay. Thank you. You're done?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We will leave. Now cross by the defense. Whom you want to call? Go there. Or you want to call Bajrang Singh only? Okay. Yes, father of the case. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Singh,
Yes.
when the Meheras demanded for dowry, first of all, why did you pay? Like, do you know that paying dowry is punishable under Section 3 of Dowry Prohibition Act?
Yeah, I paid because I thought nothing is more than my daughter's happiness, and if that sorts things between the in-laws, then I didn't have a problem.
So according to you, your daughter's image in society is more valuable than her own well-being.
My daughter's happiness is valuable.
Okay, after the solemnization of marriage, when Yashika was subjected to harassment and cruelty, then harassment and cruelty, right? According to you?
Yes.
Then what stopped you from filing an FIR at that point of time? Because you knew that she was subjected to all sorts of cruelty and harassment.
Yeah, being a father, I had to see the reputation of my daughter. There are several things that we need to keep in mind before these things, and also societal pressures there, what things will happen. Thinking of these, I didn't got thought of filing at that time.
So still, your daughter's image in society is more valuable than her own well-being, so you want your daughter to suffer, according to you.
No, I thought things will be better after her child, but it didn't got. I thought that will be better.
How was the relationship just after that consumption of poison episode? So she went back, right? You sent back your daughter.
Yes.
So was it like it mended between the couple?
No, the daughter.
Why did you send them? If it did not mend.
We thought that things will be sorted and she will that the torture will get stopped, but it didn't. And it actually.
Yes, Mr. Counsel.
So why did you wait for a disaster like the poisoning incident for this to happen before filing an FIR to the police? Why did you wait for a disaster like this to happen, the poisoning incident I'm talking about? Like, why did you waited for that before filing an FIR? You could have filed an FIR after.
Yeah, the told is just.
Okay.
He already told that there was a complaint to the police, and as per the prosecution, it has been withdrawn by her, by Vajran Singh only, as stated by the prosecution while doing the chief. Yes. You can go on with the other questions, or you can call any other witness if you like.
No, I will see. Okay, so after your daughter gave birth to her child, how frequently did you contact her over the phone?
I was busy in my business, so I didn't have that much time, but I heard things from my wife Uma Devi that she had calls with Uma Devi and she cried about this torture.
Mr. Counsel, how these questions are relevant in establishing something? What do you want to establish? If you could just tell the court. It's not your turn. Next, you are the speaker too, no?
Your Honor, I was seeking permission to speak.
No. Let him speak, then your turn will come, then you can.
What was the question?
You are trying to establish something, no? Right now. So what is your contention, basically?
What is your contention?
By asking these questions to Vajran Singh, what do you want to establish here? As a defense counsel.
So I was just wanting to know that how good their relation was over the phone.
Okay, carry on.
So you said that your daughter had contacted.
Yeah, Uma Devi.
Okay. And
on the date of incident, your daughter called? So you were talking about normal conversations. So on the date of incident, there was no call from the daughter? In the morning or no incident? Could you gauge anything like there was? She was very depressed. She is about to commit suicide or anything like that?
I didn't have such idea.
Okay. Nor your wife, Uma Devi.
We knew that she used to stay sad for the torture and all, but didn't thought she will commit.
Okay.
that would be all.
Okay. So whom you want to call next?
I would like to call the investigating officer.
I will. Okay.
So, Officer Raneja, I cannot help but notice that in the witness statement, you have mentioned that when you entered the premises of the Mehra residence, the kitchen was in a messed up condition. Now, what do you mean by messed up?
There was a burnt blanket present at this place, and the kitchen was messy.
Like what kind? Messy? Can you describe the word messy even for me?
I would not like to answer the question.
Then, if you know that the kitchen was in a messed up condition, then why didn't you call the forensic team or a team of experts who could have given a detailed analysis of what had actually happened?
Again, not like to answer the question.
Then why did you send a team to the hospital and not to the Mehra residence when you were the one was investigating the matter?
I myself went to the Mera resident.
Yeah, and you had sent a team to the hospital, right?
Yes.
Then why didn't you along with your team first gather in the Mera incidents?
Not like to answer the question.
According to the arrest memo, Rajiv Mehra was arrested on 15th April 2022 at 4 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Every question you feel like would be incriminating you? Because you are denying each and every question. Isn't it? I go. Yes, proceed.
Yes. So after visiting the crime scene, did you continue the investigation further?
Yes, I did.
Then where's the investigation report and forensic report, and why aren't they present before the court?
Not like to answer.
As an investigating officer, why do you think that an autopsy report is only enough to arrest an innocent person?
Repeat the question, please.
As an investigating officer, why do you think that an autopsy report is only enough to arrest an innocent person?
I didn't do the arrest according to the autopsy report. I did after the father has filed an FIR.
The charge sheet was filed by you.
Yes, sir.
So what did you find in your investigation?
What I find in my investigation, I made the arrest on the basis of father's complaint.
Yes, but in the charge sheet you have referred something that these are the sections and these things.
Yes.
What investigation you found? What was the result of the investigation? I think the defense counsel is trying to question that only. Yes, defense counsel.
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you like to find from the IU that what has been found from the investigation, or what? What is the question?
Your Honor, I would like to say that autopsy. What I meant to say that the autopsy report only shows the cause of death. Autopsy report is only produced by the hospital, and it cannot be produced by the police investigation. It does not prove. An autopsy report cannot prove the guilt of the offender. Isn't that right?
Yes, but they arrested after the FIR was registered.
No, I'm not getting your question, counsel. Yes? Please clarify the question.
I was trying to prove that an autopsy report cannot really prove the guilt of the offender.
But the IU has arrested. He has not convicted. Now it is before the court to decide whether that evidence is credibility of the evidence will be appreciated by the court, not by the IU. Okay? So thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes.
Honorable judges and members of the court, I am Aditya Datta and I will be representing the accused Mr. Rajiv Mehra and Shivani Mehra against the state of West Bengal along with my co-counsel Mr. XITAC'22. Before I begin my opening statement, I would like to highlight that the prosecution has made a terrible error in mentioning the jurisdiction under which they intend to approach this honorable court. Your Honor, can you please turn to page number 4 of the prosecution's memorial. Your Honor, the prosecution wants to invoke the writ jurisdiction of the Honorable Kolkata High Court. I don't see how this court can grant relief under Article 226. Your Honor, moving forward with this trial will be a waste of the court's valuable time.
Yes. So how can you invoke 226 here in the jurisdiction? So your prosecution case is dismissed. It stands dismissed. How can you? This is you are coming before Sessions Court.
Sessions Court. So how Article 226 is relevant here?
can either go for prayer, yes, due to the inaction of the police. You can afterwards go for a read if required, not now. So this doesn't stand, yes. So your prosecution case doesn't stand. The prosecution case is dismissed.